gang. And welcome to the City of Troy Planning Commission meeting on April 27th, 2021. Tonight's meeting is being conducted remotely using Zoom remote meeting platform. This is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For those watching tonight's meeting on television or on the city's YouTube channel, we welcome you. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as printed or amended by the Planning Commission. Our first item of business after roll call will be a resolution temporarily suspending and modifying the Planning Commission bylaws and rules of procedure, which will permit us to proceed with this meeting virtually and to afford an opportunity for us to receive public comment. We have made every effort to ensure that the meeting adheres to the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. We have provided opportunities for public comment via telephone, email, and virtually prior to the meeting, and all public comment, if any, will be shared with the Planning Commission. At this time, I'd ask Kathy Zarnicki to conduct the roll call, please.
Mr. Faison.
Here.
Mr. Hudson. You're muted, Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
Ms. Malala-Holly.
Here.
Ms. Parakis.
Here.
Mr. Rahman.
Here.
Mr. Roush.
Here.
Mr. Tagle.
Here.
Okay, looks like we're all here. The next item is suspension of the Planning Commission bylaws. I need a resolution from a planning commissioner to move that motion forward.
I move it, Sadek.
Mr. Rahman. Second, please. Mr. Faison. Roll call, please.
Mr. Krent, you need to call for discussion, please.
Oh, okay. There's any discussion on suspension of the Planning Commission bylaws suspension?
One question.
Okay, Ms. Parakis had her hand up first, though.
Go
ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to bring up the point that there has been a change since the way we used to do it. We used to read the emails into the record at the meeting, and I noticed last week we did not do that, or last meeting. We instead read, they were incorporated, kind of how it's written now, basically, they're incorporated into the record by reference. I felt that the result of that was that there was not a whole lot of conversation about the emails that were sent in. And I do have concerns that people who email us and we don't bring them up at the meetings, that they think that maybe they're not being heard. So I did also notice that I think City Council does continue to read their emails into the record. So I don't know if, I guess I don't know if this is the time to propose. I'd like to discuss it with everyone and see what everyone thinks. But one other concern is that the notice that was originally posted on Friday did say that emails would be read out loud. And then the notice was changed on Monday to indicate that they would be incorporated into the record. But anybody who saw the notice Friday and didn't look at it again might not come to appear tonight thinking that their email would be read into the record. So I was wondering what you guys all thought about amending that to read the emails into the record.
Any comments from the commission? Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Ms. Parakis that we probably should be reading those into the record. It's appropriate, especially since City Council does it as well.
And I have a comment too.
Go ahead.
Chairman Krent, I did write an email note to Mr. Savidant asking the process behind how this is, because I too observed that there were some comments that had come in, and I wasn't sure at what point of time that would be brought in because I'm still learning the meeting sessions and how they are conducted. But yes, I totally agree that their comments need to be read out, so everybody is heard.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Parakis.
I would be willing also to say that we could sort of put a caveat on that and say that if somebody sent in an email, but then they call in I mean, I know right now we're doing the calls or whatever, the zooming in. If they speak at tonight's meeting and then we come across an email that's by them, the understanding would be that the speaking would trump the email. We are not going to do both. But, you know, if people come in and speak, that's out there in the open and we're talking about it, and then the emails almost get brushed under the rug because, you know, they're not presented. So, you know, I can propose some language to make an amendment where we would basically read them into the record unless somebody comes to talk tonight, in which case they would not.
Okay, Mr. Hudson wanted to give a comment. Go ahead.
I have read all the emails sent to us. I understand their concern, but I don't think reading all those emails into the record is going to make any difference. We've all read them, so why do it?
Okay, Mr. Rahman was next.
Yeah, I agree with reading the email, but I believe it is only for 3 minutes, right?
That's correct. Okay, Mr. Roush. You had a comment?
My only comment was the fact that they were included as part of the record in writing and that we have read them. It certainly would be appropriate to call them out so that the people understand that we do receive them if we listed them off as opposed to having to read them all.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? Yeah, I'm going to go with Mr. Roush and Mr. Hudson. I think we've all read the emails. I think we should acknowledge that person that did send in an email. We already have read them all. I know when we had our meeting a while back, when we read them all in, it took an additional hour and a half to our meeting, and it lasted almost till 1 a.m. I don't know if it's critical that we should be reading it, but if the majority feel that we should read them all or acknowledge them all or you know, or not at all, or just say so many opposed, so many for an item, I'd be willing to hear a resolution on that. Go ahead, Mr. Hudson, you got your hand up.
Before we had COVID and the Zoom and GoToMeeting meetings, we used to get emails and copies of the emails from people who were concerned. We didn't read them at that time, and I don't see why we have to change it now, because we've received the same information, period.
Okay. Ms. Paragas.
I mean, I think the difference now is that the emails were in lieu of people being able to join the meeting. So now we're kind of finding ourselves in this hybrid. I think I'm bringing, you know, these resolutions we do every meeting, so we can base it on the meeting. But in this particular instance for tonight, for the reasons I stated, one being the notice went out incorrectly on Friday, and two, that we're not entirely sure that the word is out, that people are now able to call into our meetings. I think that this would be a good meeting to try that out. Furthermore, we don't have that many emails. I did make a list. I know it said, you know, when we received them, it said there were 15, but when I went back, there were actually only 9 on Turtlewoods because a lot of them were duplicates. We wouldn't be reading the duplicates and so on and so forth. For the other one there, it said there were 7, there were really only 3. And none of them would take 3 minutes to read each. But, you know, that, you know, Mr. Krent, that day that we were here an hour and a half, it was long, but it's the equivalent, in my opinion, of having a chambers packed with people from the city coming to talk to us, and we would sit through that and listen, hopefully attentively. So to me, that would be the equivalent of that. I get it, we're in this hybrid now, and we used to not read emails, but I think in this particular instance for tonight, I would think it would be appropriate. But
Okay. Mr. Tagle, I haven't heard from you yet. Unmute, please.
Got it. Yeah, I think acknowledging the author of the emails is fine. That way, if they're listening, they'll know that their emails were received. The planning commissioners have read them, and to go through them and read them verbally, I'm not sure the real benefit of that. So I would agree with Mr. Roush and Mr. Hudson that just entering the acknowledging the author of the email and for whatever project is appropriate.
Any other discussion? Oh, Mr. Savadon.
Yeah, just a reminder that this is the suspension of the bylaws is it's a planning commission decision and we respect that. I would note though that if the motion is to read all the emails, then the planning commission should select the planning commission member or members who are going to read the emails.
Okay. Mr. Roush.
Yeah, the one last comment I wanted to make was as it relates to the fact that these emails came in for the last meeting and they were all part of the meeting packet. The only question in my mind is there any emails that came in that wouldn't have been part of the meeting packet so that the people could actually see them. If somebody else wanted to see an observation, another neighbor or another comment had been made, that was my only question we hadn't really explored.
Okay. Ms. Dufresne.
Yes, I'd like to make 2 points. The first is to Ms. Parakis's notice about the notice. The notice was corrected timely. So I'm not concerned about that at all, if that's a consideration for this board. And second, I need to point out that in order to amend the bylaws, requires a 2/3 vote. So please keep that in mind.
Okay. Mr. Faison.
I guess my view is I don't think we need to read the emails. Acknowledging the sender, I think, does make sense so that they know that we have read them. I've read them all. But I had one question, and I think it was said earlier that City Council reads the emails. And so I'm curious to if anyone knows their rationale, and should our approach be different than theirs? Because my sense is there should be some consistency.
So I'll field that question if I may, Mr. Savadon. So when the remote meeting started over a year ago, the decision was made at City Council to read the emails and and play the recordings of the voicemails. And so the consistency was key that all of the boards across the city do the same thing, and that's why we started doing it that way. Now we've added 2 additional layers allowing for public participation, calling into this meeting and, using the Zoom platform. So yes, at the beginning of this pandemic, the beginning of using this remote platform, consistency was key. I don't know what City Council is going to do. They have not used this methodology yet for public participation. I believe they're going to use it at their meeting in 2 weeks. So I don't know what they're going to do going forward. But like I said, I'm comfortable with whatever the Planning Commission wants to decide to do today. But I'm comfortable if we just acknowledge the receipt of the emails, the person who received them. The other hybrid solution, I suppose, if this commission wants to consider, is reading, like I think Mr. Rauch alluded to, reading only the ones that are new since the last meeting. Because a lot of the emails were made part of the record as of the last meeting. So just something for this board to consider.
Okay. Any other comment before we have a resolution on this?
Chairman Krent.
Yes.
Just a quick thought. I after listening to all the fellow planning commissioners, at least acknowledging to the residents that their emails have been received and have been read by all of us, I think I would be A-okay with that. And my second question, which I had Julie already answered, Ms. Dufresne already answered, so I'm good with that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hudson, I see your hand up.
I just... Sorry.
Who's on board, Mr. Krent?
You are, Mr. Hudson.
Okay, I see Mr. Raman in front of me. But anyway, be that as it may, any emails subsequent, sorry, that's a lawyer word, later than the last meeting have been included in our emails. We've read them, and I really don't think it's necessary to at least segregate those after the meeting that we've already read to be read again.
Okay, Mr. Raman, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I actually did not read some of these emails, and I don't like to hear that somebody says that all the planning commissioners read all the emails. So we need to use the right wording so that it reflects the real fact. Because I was working during the day and I only got out of work after 5 o'clock and I didn't have enough time to read all the emails. There were quite a few of them. So I just want to be honest with this.
Okay. Any other comment before we go to a resolution? Seeing none, Ms. Barakis, would you like to make a resolution?
Sure. I mean, there was discussion, and I mean, if you're asking me, I can revise it the way I want it. Is that how it goes, Mrs. Dufresne?
Oh yeah, you're free to do what you want. This is you know, your resolution.
Oh, I see.
That's correct, because you can make any amendments to the proposed resolution that was provided to you guys previously.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, yes, I guess I would, on the resolved section that talks about the 4 methods, I would say allows 4 methods of receiving public comment for electronic meetings. I'm only going to make an amendment to the first one, and that would be number 1, public comments can be submitted for the Planning Commission meeting by sending an email to planning@troymichigan.gov. Timely received emails will be read at the meeting and made part of the record unless the email's author attends the meeting for live public comment, at which point the email will not be read, but rather incorporated into the record by reference. The rest would remain the same.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Mr. Lambert seconds. Hey, those, I'll need a roll call in favor of that resolution.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Malala,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about the delay.
Okay. So at this point, yes, Mr. Salvador.
Reminder, one or multiple planning commissioners have to read the email. So figure out which one of you.
I'm going to volunteer Ms. Barakis since it was her resolution. And if anybody wants to help her out, you know, let me know.
I'll help.
Just cue me
Mr.
when
Lambert.
it's time.
Mr. Lambert will
Well,
help.
I guess that's a question. Is when
When do we read
when
them?
do you envision? I mean, if we're talking about not being duplicative, I
Right.
would imagine that we would read them after we take public comment via phone, so we can keep track of who's. So, is that everyone
Absolutely.
in consensus with
That
that?
makes sense. Yep, makes a lot of sense. We'll go through the live people on Zoom and phone messages, phone calls to the Planning Commission in real time. Then after that, if there are any ones that weren't voiced by those live participants, then we'll go to a reading of emails that weren't live. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Now we've got a change on the printed agenda. So that was item number 9. The applicant requested to be removed. So we're going to have to
Mr.
make
Grant,
yes.
don't we have to vote on Ms. Parakis' amendment?
Didn't we do that? I'm sorry. We didn't do that, huh?
I don't think we did.
Mr. Lambert, go ahead.
I was going to say we approved her amendment, but we probably need final passage of the resolution.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then I'll need a roll call on the amended resolution. Ms. Sarnecki?
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Malala,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. I was asleep at the wheel on that point. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we have lawyers for. Next item is approval of the agenda, but it's going to be as amended by the Planning Commission because the printed one is going to be, we're not going to have number 9 on our printed agenda. So that said, who would like to move approval of the agenda with the change of eliminating public hearing for zoning, and then you can read the ID number for it. Who would like to move that resolution for approval of the agenda with the change? Mr. Rahman?
Yep.
Go ahead. You want to read the removal of, just go ahead and say.
So just say that the item number 9, public hearing, rezoning ZJPLN 2021-0001, proposed Lindsay Center rezoning, east side of Crooks, south of Big Beaver, 2690 Crooks, parcel 88-20-28-101-003, section 28, from office to urban residential. That item will be removed from the agenda.
Okay, do you have a second on that? Mr. Faison seconds it. Roll call, please, Ms. Sarnicki.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Chagle,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes from our April 13th, 2021 meeting. Anyone like to move that item?
So moved.
Mr. Lambert moves it, seconded by Ms. Malala Holly. Roll call, please, Ms. Sarnicki.
Ms. Malala Holly,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Chagle,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, next item is public comment, but we're gonna have public comment for each item. Mr. Savadon, go ahead, please.
I believe that there's at least one person on here who who's going to wish to speak during public comment for
this item.
for general public comment that does not
Okay.
involve one of these items, because I had an email exchange with
Okay.
this person.
So let's ask that person to raise their hand.
Yes, would that person utilize the Zoom to raise your hand? There's a button on a panel. If you hover over near the bottom, you'll see a raise hand symbol.
So my assumption is Brody Rukenbrod wants to comment about something that's not on the agenda. I could be incorrect, but I had an interaction today with him regarding something. Yeah,
There
his
you
hands
go.
up.
He just raised his hand. So, Jack, you're going to invite him in? Is that how it works?
You can speak.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. Hello. My name is Brody Rukenbrod. I attend the University of Detroit Jesuit High School. I am 15 and I live in Troy. And I just wanted to, request a public basketball court outside at Beach Road Park because I feel like we are lacking some of these, resources around Troy.
Very nice. Thanks for the comment. Are there any others that need to raise their hand from the attendees regarding general public comment? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next item.
Mr. Krent, can I say something regarding
Sure,
that
go
comment?
ahead. Yeah.
As I indicated, I had an email exchange with Mr. Rukenbrod this afternoon. I forwarded his email with his concern, his request to have a basketball court at Beach Road Park. I forwarded that to the facilities manager in the Department of Public Works, which I believe is the appropriate person. They are aware of his concerns, so it moves forward. I just wanted to, so that he had some assurances that I did pass it on to the appropriate person, and we are listening.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, next item is preliminary site plan review. Public hearing for, this is a continuation from our last meeting. This is a preliminary site plan review, file number SP 2020-0013, proposed Meadows of Troy, east of John R., north of Square Lake Road, section 1, parcel 88-20-01-300-016, currently zoned R1D, one family residential. Who's going to handle this one today? Mr. Carlisle.
Thank you. Good evening to the Planning Commission. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone give me a thumbs up if they can see it?
Yep. See it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the Planning Commission remembers, we last discussed this at our last meeting. I had the same presentation that I had before, so I will go through it. But for those that are new to the project or watching, I thought it was worthwhile to give everyone a background as to what we are discussing tonight. The applicant, Robertson Brother, is proposing a 31-unit detached single-family condominium cluster development. The project is located on Square Lake Road. The applicant is purchasing approximately 12 acres of an 80-acre site from the Troy School District. Once the property is split, the remaining 68 acres will remain under the control of the school district. The future of those acres is unknown. However, based on correspondence from the school district, their plan is to preserve that in perpetuity. You'll see outline of the site is in red. The proposed development area is here in green, and it's directly abuts Square Lake Road. For background, the site has community facility and the golf course used to the north. The south, east, and west is all R1D, one single family residential, and they're all single family home developments. The site plan includes 31 units. 25 units were shown in a parallel plan that's required to be developed to determine what the underlying density is. The applicant is seeking 6 additional units by providing over 30% of the site in open space. We do note that there are 2 proposed access points off of Square Lake outlined with my highlighter there. The Planning Commission should remember and be aware that this project was previously approved in another form by the Planning Commission. That project included 23 units, and this one includes 31 units. The same amenities are included, including the preservation of wetland area, as well as a trailhead and parking lot to serve the area. We do note that the site plan complies with all the R1D setback requirements with regards to cluster, except the side yard setback deviation, and we discussed that at length at the last meeting. You'll note that units 1 through 5 are providing a 10-foot building separation rather than the required 15 feet. So they're seeking a 5-foot deviation from those units. 6 through 12 and 16 through 22 and 23 and 25 are providing 11-foot separation rather than the required 15 feet. So again, that's a 4-foot deviation. And 13 through 15 and 25 through 31 are a 12-foot building separation rather than 15 feet. In discussions with the applicant on a staff standpoint, we feel comfortable with the deviation as requested because the proposed houses are a 1-story product, as well as you can see by the pitch of the roof. There's not the massing is greatly reduces as you go up in height, and so the need for the 15-foot could be relieved by the proposed product from the applicant. We do note that the applicant is providing a proposed housing product that's desired in the community, and one that Director Saudon and I push a lot when we meet with developers, and that's a 1-story product with a 1st floor master bedroom and bathroom. We don't have very many of these in Troy, and this will be one of the larger developments that have this type of housing product. In addition, as I noted, the applicant is constructing a 13-space gravel parking lot that'll be open to the public. There will be an easement across this road to access it, and so that will be open to the public to use as a trailhead parking area. The applicant notes that the trails will be determined after the actual location of the trails within the school district property will be determined based on a conservation easement that will be established. What is not clear that we've asked about is regards to those 68 acres that we noted at the school district. But in conversations again that we had with the school district, their plan is to keep that area as open space in perpetuity. With regards to open space itself, the area of open space is outlined in red. It includes 42% if you exclude the pond, the detention pond, and 52% of the total area if you include the pond. Within the open space designation, there is a wetland as well as woodlands that they are preserving. Again, I noted the 13 space parking lot and the trailhead access. The product that they're showing includes 3 different front elevations, and you can see the left and rear and right elevation are also in the upper right-hand corner. And the applicant will have to vary these housing forms as they go through as part of the building permit review process. Applicant wanted us to share a proposed rendering of the site to show the buildings in their proximity to each other as well as the front of the street. So in summary, in the approval to seek 6 additional units, the applicant is providing the following benefits. Preserving over 30% of the site as open space, which allows for the preservation of natural resources and site amenity. The private road, which would include additional buffer than a public road would allow. An open space collar around the perimeter to adjacent properties. Long-term protection and preservation of natural features. Preservation of numerous trees in a regulated wetland. The site can be adequately served by public services. The applicant is providing a public parking lot and a trailhead. And lastly, the applicant is providing a housing product with the first floor master bedroom and bath desired by the community. So we do find that the site provides many benefits that would not be achievable without a cluster development. And we are recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the cluster plan, provided that the applicant provide a new assessment or extension from Eagle, provide a maintenance agreement for the parking lot, and provide an easement over Turtle Woods for access to that parking lot. So, Mr. Chair, I'm open for any questions from the Planning Commission.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carlisle, I was wondering if you have access that you can put up on the screen to show what the alternate plan would be is if for some reason both Planning Commission and City Council were to turn down this proposed cluster plan, because I think a lot of people don't realize that if we turn it down, they could still be building that property according to the original plan meeting the R1D.
Yeah, I have it on here. Just give me 1 second, Mr.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Lambert, this is the plan that we used, the applicant submitted to determine base underlying density. You can see there's 25 units. It includes a loop road. These are public roads. What's outlined in the hash mark is open space that would basically have to be preserved because it's required wetland. So you can see it does not include it doesn't include the trailhead, doesn't include any of the trails themselves, doesn't include the parking lot. It doesn't include preservation of as many regulated wetlands. It requires a significant amount of tree removal. And lastly, one thing we want to note is you'll note the backyards of actually where people can put structures actually are can abut right up to the property line of adjacent properties, which wouldn't be allowed in the cluster development. So from our standpoint, the inclusion of 6 additional lots, we're getting a much more desired project than we would be under what they could do basically as a by right development with the existing underlying zoning. Did that answer your question, Mr. Lambert?
It does. Thank you.
And thank you for the question, Mr. Lambert. That was excellent. Anyone else for Mr. Carlisle? Go ahead, Mr. Rahman.
My question is there any landscaping requirement on the sides where we have neighbors?
No, there are no landscaping requirements. We would consider that a single family abutting a single family, so there's no required landscaping along those edges.
But because of the density, do you think that would be more appropriate to have some landscaping?
It's not a zoning ordinance requirement. The Planning Commission can certainly ask the applicant to put additional trees in there. It is, again, it needs approval from the City Council, so ultimately it could be your recommendation, but it's not a zoning ordinance requirement because we consider it single family abutting single family.
Yeah, that'll be my recommendation, just to add that. Thank you.
Mr. Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for you, Ben. Is there any linkage between this project and the land that's owned by the Troy School District? I know there was a conversation that the district plans to preserve it as open space, and but does that what the district chooses to do with the other 68 acres have any bearing on this project, or is this a standalone project that we evaluate based on the merits of that specific project, back 12 acres?
Mr. Faison, I'm going to answer that really lightly, and I don't want to overstep my bounds because I'm not 100% sure. My understanding is the applicant purchased these 12 acres independent of the rest of 68 acres from the school district, as my understanding. And Ms. Dufresne, if she's got more information, or the applicant can enlighten us, but I do not believe there was a direct link between what happened on the 68 acres and what happened on this property. They're independent parcels.
Okay. Any other comments, or Mr. Savinant?
There are 4 attendees who are associated with this project from the application side.
Okay.
Jim Butler, Jim Clark. I see Rick West has been pulled in, and Tim Lockman.
Okay. That was going to be my next area. If there was no further comments directed to Mr. Carlisle, I'd like to hear from the applicant. So at this time,
we designating one person to speak on behalf of them, Mr. Savinant?
That's up to the chair.
You would,
but I would whoever speaks should introduce himself for the public record.
Right. Absolutely. So who's going to represent the applicant in this case?
I am.
And your name?
My name is Tim Lockren. I'm the Director of Land Acquisition for Robertson Brothers Homes, 6905 Telegraph Road.
Okay. Go right ahead, please.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again. Appreciate your time. I think it probably makes sense to go through the presentation quickly again, just to kind of have a refresher. So if that's okay, I could share my screen. Let's see if it goes to the right one. It did not go to the right one. All right, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I'll start from the very beginning. So the land is owned by the school district, as Ben had mentioned. It's basically the front 12 acres of a greater 80-acre parcel. Robertson is proposing to build a nicely appointed ranch home community, significant open space. This will be just under 1,900 square feet. They'll include a 2-car garage, 2 bedrooms and a den, and 2.5 baths. Finished basement will be an option for the buyers. Our belief, and obviously we've heard it from many people in the Troy area, but our belief is that this housing product is in very short supply in the market, and allows Troy residents to downsize in their own community. Right now, you have, and I can tell you because we're building in other nearby communities, you have people leaving Troy to go to other communities because this product does not exist. So we think it's very important to offer this type of product within Troy itself. It'll also free up existing colonial homes for new families looking to buy or to be in Troy, which I think is a very important thing as well. And again, Troy residents just have limited options for this type of product. We are proposing an open space plan with over 40% open space with walking trails. It will include a trailhead, which I'll show you in a minute, for public access to a future open space complex to be dedicated by the school district, and we'll obviously go into more detail on that. The plan does represent a true cluster concept. This allows for a significant amount of saved open space as compared to a traditional single-family subdivision. Ben had showed that parallel plan. That would be a by right, which, we don't want to build that. I don't think Troy wants to see that. The residents don't want to see that. What we're proposing is truly a better rig for the site. And again, it's not a traditional subdivision. There's plenty of options for traditional single-family subdivisions in Troy. And again, that does come with a host of different issues in and of itself. Those home buyers would have the ability to put pools in the backyard, to fence it off, to have swing sets, that sort of thing. In our development, that is not allowed. They basically own their box, which is their home, and a little bit of area in the rear for privacy area, which usually is a deck. Everything else is open space, which is maintained in perpetuity by the Homeowners Association. Our buyers do not object to our requested building separation setbacks and actually prefer the aesthetic that this community provides. And again, we believe it's unique in the quality of the homes and the right sizing of the rooms compared to other smaller duplex communities. Let me go through our slide deck just a little bit here. So the development area is 12.42 acres, which is, it comes out to 2.5 dwelling units per acre, which is wholly consistent with surrounding single family and throughout Troy. Existing zonings are R1D, family residential. We're proposing 31 total units. The cluster option would allow 32 through the cluster ordinance of Troy. Again, they are for sale. They're detached ranch condominiums. And we believe this is the right size for this market. It's 1,834 square feet against 2 bedrooms with a den and 2.5 baths. And that really is kind of the sweet spot for those buyers that are in their, say, larger Troy colonial that want to downsize and stay in the community, stay where their friends are, stay where their children are. That is what we hear constantly from people in the Troy area. And again, open space, it's 42% if you exclude the pond. If you include the pond, it's 52%. I'd argue it's even more than that with the common element, common open space. But I think this really goes to say just how much open space we are conserving. And this does not include any of the Troy, the remaining 68 acres. So just a couple of highlights. Very high quality, owner-occupied, empty nester homes. We are building this in surrounding communities, so you're more than welcome to take a look at what we offer. We're just opening up our model in Rochester Hills, not too far from here. It's been a very successful project, and again, it is the same as we're proposing here. Buyers have flocked there. 31 new taxpayers, whereas obviously it's a tax-exempt user. There will be significant natural open space preservation and will provide a trailhead and parking area for public use, which I'll point out on the site plan in a second. Again, it'll be a walkable community, and there will be pedestrian trail connections to that open space complex, along with tree-lined streets throughout. And not to mention, we have quite a bit of buffer along Square Lake. I'd say probably more than we need. We had suggested maybe moving some of those trees to the sides, as one of the commissioners have pointed out, buffering to the other adjacent single family. There are a lot of trees on Square Lake, but that is meeting the minimum code. And again, it is, I want to stress this because I think it's very important. This is a housing option for residents that are currently underserved. This does not exist currently. There is no new product that we are proposing. And I know there's a lot of demand for it. Just shameless self-promotion. We're a highly respected builder with over 75 years experience. We have built quite a bit in Troy, so you should be familiar with us. We're obviously familiar with you. We did build the Chatfield Commons community at Coolidge and Waddles, which is a similar type of feel and community. Those are a little bit bigger units, but that is similar to what we're proposing. And those are, obviously it's a condominium. They're spaced appropriately as this project is. We also build townhomes. You've probably seen our townhomes around. We built the Kilmer Place on Big Beaver. We built Bradley Square on Rochester, and we are currently finishing out at Long Lake Square. So hopefully you've been able to see what we're doing in Troy here. And we're very proud of what we've been able to do. So getting into the site concept, first of all, I want to just stress, and this doesn't show the overall 80 acres. I could bring up Google Earth to show that, but this is less than 10% of the entire area that the school district owns. Less than 10% would be touched. The way we see it, I don't want to speak for the school district, but the way we see it, this really is a funding source to create the donation for the conservancy, the Nature Conservancy. And it also allows for a parking area, gravel trailhead parking area, which does not exist, which would tie into the overall trail system. We feel that that's very important. Personally, from Robertson's standpoint, we wouldn't propose this in a condominium community. These are private streets. We'll provide public access. This was important to the school district. It's important from what we heard from staff as well. But this is important from the school district. This was a contingency of our purchase agreement that we provide this trailhead in anticipation of a donation for the remainder of the property. As you can see, it connects to trails, which will go to the north. So, I think it's probably safe to say that Robertson moves a little faster than a school district. So I know there's, conversation about, well, they haven't figured out what they're going to do. I think they're, first of all, looking to see what happens on this property. And that will get the wheels in motion. So we just move faster than school districts, if you can believe that. So that's that should explain some of that. And Rick West is on the line if he does want to weigh in. But I think that's he kind of mentioned that same concept in the last meeting. And again, that is a public access trail. That trailhead that is for the public to use, and our HOA would be maintaining. So I think that is quite a public benefit. And just showing this site plan, I think it's very important to note. I know there was conversation about the building separation. And I made this point last time. I want to make it very clear. Our home buyers have no issues with building separation as we're showing it, 0. This is far better than a duplex, which is another option that they can have elsewhere. We built a duplex this size down in Northville, and we had to stop because nobody wanted them. And we introduced this exact plan. So they would rather not touch walls. They do not care what it is from one building to the other. And frankly, we're very careful in planning it. We don't have windows looking into another a unit. And I'll show you a perspective of what I mean by that. But there is no concern. There is no harm to the public by our single request for deviation with the building separation. The public won't see that. From the street, from Square Lake, you'll see a huge buffer. And with really our home buyers that would see that, and they don't care. I'll show you a perspective. That does not bother them by any means. Now, we could meet the 15-foot building separation. What that means is the trailhead goes away. What that means is we expand into the wetlands. We have all this area. I don't know if my cursor is going to work. We have all this area that we could conceivably expand north to. We are trying to save as much open space as we possibly can. And I don't want that fact to get lost. We could easily move this up farther north and meet the 15-foot building separation. But that is not what a cluster plan is. A cluster plan is not to meet the traditional setbacks, the traditional standards, development standards. It is specifically to allow this type of development. And we believe that this type of product has been encouraged from Troy in the past. So we believe this is the correct application of the cluster ordinance as we're showing it. And again, the whole purpose of the cluster ordinance is to provide flexibility specifically for this type of use. Since I'm on the site plan, the landscaping, I just want to point out, everything will be maintained by an established homeowners association. That means all of the trees along Square Lake. That means all of the street trees. That means the road. That means the trailhead. That means all of the landscaping that will be placed on the units. You don't see, obviously, the individual landscape for the units on this scale, but the homeowners association, it's beautiful. The homeowners association maintains this in perpetuity, and it is the homeowners that control the association after we build out. So they have a very vested interest in making sure this looks as great as it possibly can forever. So I want to make all those points as we discuss this. Just quickly on the trail plan, again, there are existing trails already. We are proposing to connect to them. This would be a new trail, and then this little connection here. So we've looked at all this, and we feel these are the best connections, which will obviously be for the public, particularly with this gravel trailhead. Just from a site context, and again, this doesn't show the entire 80 acres, but it does, kind of show reference what we have surrounding us. We have traditional single-family neighborhoods, from 2 to 3 units per acre. That is what you see in the surrounding areas. This product would be very cohesive with that, and it's a great transitional use with all the open space we're providing. I want to show this slide. Ben did show this as well. Specifically, this obviously shows our architecture and our elevations. It does show the typical building separation. If these were 2-story homes, you would have a ton of effect. And that 10-foot separation, 11 foot to 15-foot separation would be, a lot closer than what it is. These are very open. These are ranch style homes. They're 1-story. And again, this is the side of one of the units. You can see there's no windows there. The other side, I'm sorry, this doesn't show very well, but this other side is a bay window for the den. So there are windows here, there are none here. You have zero concern with one home to another home. And that's just how these buyers are. That's what they prefer. From a product design, very rich details, rich materials. Again, you can see it in person right down the street. Basically, Brewster and Walton is probably the nearest community that we're building. But again, it's brick, it's stone, it's hardy, very, very rich detail. And then the interiors, you can see, our base models are great. And then we've seen a lot of people optioning these up in our design gallery in Bloomfield. So just moving on, so I answer some of your questions. Again, we feel this is the right use. This is the right place at the right time. It's the right product. We hear a lot of people looking for the specific type of home, and we can provide it for them here and save a lot of open space, more than I ever have in my career. So I think it's very important to note that this would be a catalyst for preserving a lot of open space here. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Yes, any questions for the applicant? I'd like to get a full screen here if possible, but we may want to leave the slides there if you have any questions specifically to a slide. Since I can't see, not unless I change my view, I guess.
Might be me, I don't.
Show non-view.
I was showing the wrong screen.
Yeah, I don't think I can see all of the commissioners and the presentation at the same time, unless we have an IT person that can explain how to do that. I don't see
Mr. Krent, this is IT.
Good.
So if you look at where you see yourself, the few members that you can see,
yep,
up at the upper top, the upper right corner of that, you can flip the screen if the presentation's up, so you can make one bigger than the other. So right now there should be an option up at the very top of your panelists. It might be above Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, of course.
And then the right side, there's going to be, if you hover over it, should say swap shared screen with video.
Well, let's see.
Mr. Krent, the other option, this is Julie speaking. The other option is to toggle back to participants and then click on panelists as opposed to attendees. Mm-hmm. And then we ask the planning commissioners to use the raise hand feature. It'll show you who has their hand raised. So right now, Mr. Hudson has his hand raised.
Yes,
so
I
that's
see.
another option.
All right. Well, Mr. Hudson, since your hand's up, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Laughlin, you've indicated that your buyers are not concerned about the diminution of the setbacks between homes. How many buyers in this project have expressed that opinion?
In this specific project, we have not opened for sales.
So, but your statement is that nobody's concerned in your other projects, but not in this one.
That's correct.
Okay. Secondly, if we were to reduce the or expand the setbacks on the right near the trailhead, would that void your purchase agreement as a requirement that the trailhead be there for your purchase?
I believe it would, Mr. Hudson. That is one of the contingencies we had in our purchase agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, any other hands up from the commissioners? I think I'm gonna have to rely on the hands up little icon. If you go to the bottom, hover over the bottom of your screen and see the raised hand. Mr. Roush.
Thank you. Yes, I had a question in reference to the side yard setbacks as well of the petitioner. At our last meeting, you gave us the example of your Rochester Hills development. And I looked at the plans for your Rochester Hills development, and I see that the side yards on all those homes are 20 feet. So obviously that development, you have, by comparison, 7 acres of land that's being developed. And in this proposal, you actually have like 5.7 acres that's being developed, leaving aside the area that's going to be for trailhead and wetlands, et cetera. So you could have fit many more houses in that development, or at least asked for variances to do so. Is that true? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, I'd have to look on the plans. I don't know on the top of my head. I guess from my standpoint, we did not have the open space that needed to be saved. So we look at this site different. This site is, special because it has the open space to preserve. That site we had, basically sort of it's for all intents and purposes more of a box that we had to work with. So a lot of times it's how you fit it in. It's site planning. It's a whole process, as of course you know. But again, that did not have the significant natural open space to save. It didn't have really any natural open space. It was a cleared lot. So we had different, I'd say, existing conditions with that property.
I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon? Is that okay?
I'll leave it at that. I'll address mine later.
Mr. Clark has his hands up.
I guess I would just add on the Rochester Hills project, we would have asked for a 15 or a 10-foot setback, but we would not have gained any more units. There was not a run of enough houses where changing that setback would have added or subtracted a unit, if that makes sense. It's all about the geometry of the number of houses along a one single line. So, we would have tried to reduce it because we know that we've protected the views from the windows. It just would not have added an additional house in Rochester had we gone to a smaller setback.
And I could add as well that, that was, under obviously a different zoning district, different zoning category, and it was not a cluster which encouraged this type of development.
For flexibility.
For flexibility, correct.
Does that help, Mr. Roush?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with the comment about the significant run of houses, because the one block had 8 houses. So reducing it to the same kind of setback that we have here would have created at least 80 feet of lot width without making any other adjustments at the end of the street. But again, I think I've made my point.
Okay. And looking for any other hands that might be up on our from the commissioners. The only thing I'd like to send. I see one from Mr. Tagle. Please go ahead, John.
Thank you. Just a question. As far as the side yard setbacks, you're asking for a 5 and a 4 foot and a 3 foot deviance from the requirement. When those are those measured from your bay window, or are those measured from the majority of the facade?
Yes, it's measured from the bay window, which extends, I think, almost 2 feet, so foot
Right.
10.
So in reality, for almost, I won't say 100%, but well into the 90%, the distance between the two walls of the two houses are another 1 foot 8 inches greater. So really, you're asking for variances of the 40 inches would be the one that would coincide with the 5 foot, right? The reality of it. And then we're down to a 28 inch and then 16 inch. So, I mean, we're not, I understand what you're doing and what you're saying, but the reality of it, the major walls are really a greater distance apart than the deviation that you're asking for.
Yeah, that is correct, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Tagle.
Yeah, nice point, John. Appreciate it. Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you, Chairman Krent. I just have a question regarding the property sitting close to the wetlands, the pond, and the green space. Of course, the homeowners are going to be using fertilizers, herbicides, and so on and so forth, those kind of chemicals. I just want to know how much of those chemicals will end up in the detention pond or the green space behind the property.
Tim?
Yep.
I think that's something we can address with, if that's a concern for Troy, we can address that in the condominium documentations and the associations with what type of fertilizers we use. I mean, nobody fertilizes their lawns. That's a group decision at the association level, and we could be very sensitive to your concerns with those wetlands.
Yeah, the proximity, that is where I am coming from, because you have such wonderful trees and green space, which all of us want to preserve here. But at the same time, the longevity in terms of the use of chemicals, whether it is the front yard, side yard, or backyard that people will tend to use, how much of it will get drained into those areas, potentially harming the natural life that exists there. So I definitely would like to see something that, I don't know how you will incorporate that, but something where we are keeping ecology in mind. Because preserving green space is aesthetic value for a city. It talks a lot about what we care about as a community and as a city. And everybody loves to see green space. But at the same time, the depletion of it can happen this way too, with the use of chemicals in the future. And already the earth is going to be turned around while you're building the homes and such. Now we are adding the use of chemicals too, which nobody can actually avoid. So just want to bring that point out to your attention.
I think it's a good point, and we can address it in our community specifics and in our association, so that we're using environmentally friendly chemicals and watch where the applications are put. And that's something that staff can review in our condo docs.
Okay, thank you.
See Ms. Parakis. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'm struggling a little bit because I want to like it. I want to love it. I mean, I really like what you've done with it. I think it's definitely fulfilling a need in the area. I still have my two concerns. The first, of course, is the side setbacks. I think the part that I'm struggling with is I do understand the concept of the cluster development and the need to protect the open space. But when you're abutting 60 acres of open space, to me, it's a little bit, seems like it's being used in an area that it doesn't really need to be used in the sense that you're already going to be next to 60 acres of open space. On the flip side, when one of my fellow commissioners asked the question about what happens if we don't recommend this and they're going to use the entire 12 acres and put houses on them, I did not prefer that, of course. But I guess I'm struggling because I feel like there are ways, you said there's plenty of room to, you said that you're leaving more open space than what's required in the cluster. So I can't figure out why you can't just spread things out and move everything up. Why that gravel trailhead can't move a little bit up or be reconfigured in a way that that it just allows for a little bit of widening to meet that side deviation. You made the comment that people even prefer the aesthetic of having the houses close together. And it was a survey done and people said, yes, we want them 10 feet. I think it's a quality of life issue. I think it's nobody's pretending that anyone's hanging out in their side yard. But to me, it's just, it's the appearance of what it looks like.
Yeah, if I could speak to that, and Jim might be able to chime in as well. No, we obviously did, buyers that for that setback, but we've been a practitioner doing this for over 75 years. We've built a lot of these type of communities. In fact, we've done more than anybody else in the entire Southeast Michigan market. So I think it's safe to say we do know our market, we do know our buyer. We're going to invest many millions of dollars into this project. If we felt there was an issue whatsoever, we would not be showing this project. I think it kind of speaks volumes that we are as bullish as we are on this site plan, just knowing the buyer that as we do, and that we will put our money where our mouth is. This is something that we feel is not an issue. We feel it creates more of a cohesive development. And I do understand your concern. And again, it's not a traditional single family subdivision. It doesn't need to meet, those same standards because it's not a two-story, canyon effect type of development. Jim, did you want to add to that?
Well, I understand. We've talked about a lot of things. I think Mr. Commissioner Tagle, said we're looking for, the cluster ordinances so you can provide flexibility. We're looking for between 16 and 40 inches in selected areas so that we don't go back and impact wetlands. So if we impacted 2 wetlands, which we don't think, gaining the 16 inches is, I don't think Eagle will think that's important. We don't feel we need it for sales. So we have put the units between the border of the wetland and Long Lake or in Square Lake Road. And then we do have a requirement for a future trailhead for what hopefully is going to be the 70-acre or 67-acre preservation of a truly unique feature. So the trade-off is, a little uncomfort with a setback. It's a age-targeted buyer who wants to feel secure, and the proximity is not something that we have found in 75 years of building these is an issue. Once they're 60 or 70 years old, they're not home as much. They're in Florida, they're traveling, and they do like the proximity. And Troy residents are different than the other communities we built in, but we're asking for your belief in somebody who's been doing it for 75 years, that we know what we're doing, and some flexibility that is provided for in your ordinance, even if it isn't to your liking. We are very confident it'll be to the future residents' liking, and it's a product type that we really feel will be highly successful, even in spite of the setbacks. We just don't want to compromise any more of that preservation area to get a few more inches here or there.
Any other hands up for the applicant? Mr. Rahman, then Mr. Hudson.
Well, just want to add that I know this proposition is not perfect from zoning or setback standpoint, but we also need to think about what we need. I have been in the Planning Commission, it's my 3rd year, and I know that we are looking for houses like this. So I feel like this is a good proposal. I know it's 10 feet instead of 15 feet from a side setback standpoint. But that 5 feet, actually, I don't know if it makes a big difference from proximity standpoint. Maybe it makes difference when the houses are tall, but since the height is not that high, it's not tall houses, so I think it would not look bad. So I feel like we really need this kind of houses for our elderly community. So I hope my fellow planning commissioners will agree to this proposal and vote for this. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson.
I listened to Miss Malala Holly, and I was impressed. I had never thought of the topic of the environment and treatments of lawns to make them look pristine and green. And I would strongly recommend with her that in the condominium documents, that it's very specific as to which less harmful chemicals can be applied in the landscaping.
Thank you for that. Any others for the applicant? Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, I was just curious as to what the homeowners association fees are predicted to be.
Sure, they range anywhere from say $350 to $450, depending on the site, the size of the homes. I would imagine this would be more in the $350 to $400 a month, and that includes a lot of things. That includes obviously the water for all the landscaping. It includes all of the mowing, so there's no cost for that. It includes some reserves for the streets and the homes themselves. So that's a typical homeowners association fee.
Per month?
Per month, correct. Yes, per unit.
I see a hand from Ms. Malala Holly going up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chairman Krent. Just a quick question. Between Unit 12 and Unit 13, what is the space that we are seeing there? What's the backyard space that we see there? And is there a window on Unit 12's side that will infringe on the privacy of Unit 13's backyard?
So Unit 12, the window is on the left side, so no.
Okay.
The setback is from 12, between 12 and 13 from the farthest point. If you can see my cursor from here to here, it is 49 feet. And it's 43 feet if they have a covered deck option. So, more than 40 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we open it up for the public hearing?
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
I'm sorry, I have one of these Google Pixel books and I can't find that hand raising feature, so I have to do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, that's just fine, Dave. Speak out when you can.
Just a follow-up. I don't know if Mr. Rahman was still interested in the feature of having some landscaping on the west side of the property on the west side of the units 1 through 5 or not, but is that something that the petitioner would be opening to putting a little bit more landscaping on that side?
Yeah, we've had discussions. I think that's something that's a possibility. Again, we had proposed, I think, at one point to staff if we could move some of these along Square Lake, as you can see, there's quite a bit to meet code, and move them over here. We do have some drainage that we have to work around, but we've talked to our landscape architect. We can certainly put landscaping, put trees back here.
Okay. Maybe Mr. Rahman may want to add that to the resolution.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Seeing none others, before I open the public hearing, or continue the public hearing, I should say, my comments are, I think it's an excellent proposed project. I really don't find any dramatic or super detrimental situation with the side setbacks between the units. This is far better than a duplex, which I personally abhor. But to have that space between, and I lived when I was a young person in Detroit, where the homes were about 10, 12 feet apart. That was standard. And it was fine. We didn't have any problems with our next door neighbors. And you had kids in the houses, 4 in ours and 6 or 7 in others. There was never an issue. So I don't have an issue with the side setbacks at all. Thank you, Mr. Tagle, for shedding a little more light on that. Other than that, I'm going to continue the public hearing if there's no other comments from commissioners this time. So I'm going to go to attendees, and the attendees, if there are any attendees that want to comment on this particular item, please raise your hand. Or is that the only means that they can do this, Ms. Dufresne?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. I elevated you. Yes, Mr. Krent. So anyone who wants to comment at this time, if you're already in the meeting as an attendee, you should raise your hand. For the record, I do not see any attendees who have called in by phone, so we don't need to do the *9 thing. I would like to add for the public record that I have been on the YouTube channel, and I can confirm that the information on how to get to the zoom.us with the meeting ID and the passcode are on the broadcast. I also have been in contact with City Clerk Aileen Dixon, and she confirmed for me, she sent a screenshot of the cable broadcast, and it shows the same information. So I noted as of about a minute ago, there were 8 people watching on YouTube. So if anyone wants to call in or sign in through Zoom, they have the ability to do that with the information on the screen. So all of that said, if anyone who is an attendee at this time wants to make a comment, they need to raise their hand. And Mr. Chairman, you can call on them in the order that they raise their hand.
Okay. I don't see any hands going up on the attendees list. So do we have any emails on this that would like to be read by Ms. Parakis? We'll start with her.
I am going to need a second to pull them up. I think I should be able to get them quickly.
Sure.
I can start out.
Okay, go ahead,
Mr. Chairman.
Before
anyone starts reading, I'm happy to be a timer, and I can, at the 3-minute mark, I can say 3 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm ready. I'm just going to do them in the order in which I have them here, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, so this was sent in from Laurie Shaw. First, I want to say that after watching the April 13th meeting on YouTube, I was very pleased with the representation of our Troy board members. Even though I didn't attend the meeting, I really appreciated all the great questions that the board members asked in regards to the Meadows of Troy development. I think they have our voices. At least I nodded my head several times and said to myself, great question. So thank you for all the great representation. In the April 13th meeting, the Robertson Brothers representative mentioned that a homeowners association would maintain the landscaping, and I'm concerned with pesticide and herbicide usage that is commonly used throughout the lawns in Troy. Will these lawns be maintained with pesticides and herbicides? I'm concerned that pesticides and herbicides use will inevitably run off into the wetlands behind these houses and cause great harm to invertebrates, aquatic vertebrates, and other animals. From April 13th meeting, a low point was discussed behind house number 5, which would make runoff into the undeveloped land easy to occur. Or just by using these potentially toxic substances, they can get into the soil in the undeveloped land and cause harm to the above as stated. I've seen this happen around Troy. For example, I've seen runoff from a residence, pesticide and herbicide use on a lawn near the Sturgis Drain into a conserved wetland from the houses at the end of Tallman Drive in Troy, east of Livernois, north of Waddles. Also, pesticides are used in the lawns of homes on River Chase Drive in Troy that back up to the Rouge River. When it rains, these chemicals have to be seeping into the river. I know the state of Michigan doesn't regulate these pesticides and herbicides that lawn care companies use, but I think any use of these are a huge mistake to our environment. There has to be a better way. I really would like to see a complete ban on the usage of herbicides and pesticides, but at the very least, just no usage near our conserved wetlands. Secondly, I'm worried about the use of mosquito control, chemicals that are toxic to aquatic vertebrae and other animal species, in the detention pond in the wetlands behind the Meadows of Troy proposal. The type of mosquito control that is used in Huber Park says that it is toxic to any marine life. I must say I really appreciate the lack of mosquitoes in Huber Park, but at what cost? I know there are no frogs, turtles, or marine life in Huber Park, and I would not like to see this happen for the wetlands behind the Meadows of Troy development. if these substances will be used, I think we need to come up with a better plan and not use toxic substances near our wetlands and undeveloped lands, such as the 68 acres behind the proposed development. Also, I do not want to see residents taking matters in their own hands by dropping mosquito control substances into the detention pond or wetlands behind the houses. On the website next door, I read a post that a Troy resident personally put a mosquito control substance into a pond, stating that he wasn't sure if he could do that. I think most of those substances are very toxic to marine life. Thank you all. Lori Shaw. Okay.
Any others on this particular item? Any other emails?
Yeah. There's, I mean, yeah, that was one.
Oh, okay. Go ahead then. Please proceed.
This is from Ellen B. I'm emailing you again today. Ellen B has written in a couple times, so I'm going to read this one. And if there's another one, I think this is her latest one. Oh, jeez. Okay. I am a frequent visitor of these woods, and tearing down even 13 or so acres of it is doing an injustice to the woods and the people to go to them. To show you how adamantly I feel about this, I created a petition. The development of even more wooded areas in Troy, such as the Turtle Woods Preserve, is a travesty for both environmental and safety reasons. Environmentally, it is extremely unwise to destroy such a large forest whose carbon capture capabilities are sorely needed given our urgent global struggle to reduce carbon emissions. This is especially concerning given that there's no public information about any effort from the developers to remain environmentally conscious during development, or any effort to contribute any sort of green infrastructure to the project after its completion. From a safety standpoint, I have two major concerns. First, it has been widely known that over the past decade, displaced animals from prior suburban development projects have been wandering into neighborhoods in search of a new home. This has presented driving hazards as deer have been spotted on numerous occasions running through neighborhood streets, and there have been multiple instances of coyotes and other predators prowling the streets at night after their homes have been destroyed, endangering our pets and children, all because we allowed developers to destroy their habitats. I feel it is also worth noting that the neighborhood near Turtle Woods Preserve experienced major flooding and property damage due to mismanaged construction projects in the area. An immediate return to development in this area would only lead to further endangerment of existing properties. It is for these reasons that we must postpone and reject any proposed development projects that would result in the destruction of Turtle Woods Preserve. I attended school in Troy and recognized over the course of my time growing in the city that the destruction of natural habitats was prominent and extensive. I vividly remember growing up, being able to pursue the woods near this area and the surrounding, and having less and less room with each year of construction to play and learn with my friends. I'm now studying policy and environment, but it wasn't until I moved to the west side of the state that I was exposed to natural beauty to encourage such a path. We need more environmentalists, and they're rarely born from urban cities. Not to mention what's left of the city's natural ecosystem will be destroyed. The continuous destruction of natural areas is detrimental not only for native species, but for us humans as well. We need to preserve these lands for the myriad of species that call it their home. Humans have done enough damage to disrupt the natural balance of the ecosystem as it is, and we need to fight to preserve the beautiful land, if not for the wildlife, then for our own health and futures. I've lived in Troy for 20 years, and I love walking through our nature preserves and wooded areas. The woods add monetary value to our community by increasing Troy's beauty and residents' health and happiness, as well as sequestering carbon, lowering nearby heating bills, collecting stormwater runoff to prevent flooding, and provide homes to wildlife to support a diverse ecosystem. Developers have far too much money and power and no sense of ethics. They seem to destroy any land that will make them money with no consideration for the environment and the wildlife who live there. How are we to fight climate change and preserve biodiversity, the many animals who will die with their homes gone, if such eradication of land is allowed to benefit developers, the powers, and that be an entitled people?
3 minutes.
Okay.
Ms. Brackus, do you want me to help you read some of them so you don't have to do them all?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I just did, yeah, okay, so go ahead and do one off the list.
All right. Okay. Next one is, looks like Maureen Bedford. Looks like she has two combined emails. I'll read the one where she's talking about the substance of the issue. Hello, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of the development going on at the Turtle Woods Nature Preserve and Trail. I find it disturbing the rapid rate in which the city of Troy is losing its green space. Dilapidated spaces are not being reused but remain blemishes within the city, and beautiful natural green spaces are being destroyed and overdeveloped. There should be incentives given to developers to reuse vacant, already developed properties, and pride taken in preserving what little is left of natural environments within Troy. Look at the cities that surround ours and the pride they take in their natural spaces. Their citizens are proud to show them off. Troy didn't plan well early on in preserving natural spaces for long trails, etc., but we have pockets of green spaces that we enjoy. We take pride that we have wildlife such as eagles, owls, coyote, deer, turtles, and frogs that still find a home in our community. That we have environments that can sustain these fragile creatures who depend on stable, clean waters and land to hunt and live on. In regards to Turtle Woods Nature Preserve, I hate the thought of it being touched for development. At what point will we lose the residents that currently live there with the building encroachment and destruction of habitat? People see dollar signs and lose sight of what is truly the greater value. Minimally, I ask of this development proposal to keep the current nature trail system that is plainly mapped out at the south entrance off of Square Lake Road intact. The southern portion of land that the current trails reside on is critical to the year-round enjoyment of the nature preserve. From mid-April to October, most of this trail is underwater because of the wetland. This is nature's natural process which people can respect. The southern and eastern portion of the trail is the only portions you can walk during these months. The current plans of destruction and development would remove a large portion of this dry trail that currently can be enjoyed year-round. If it could be redrafted to leave the trail intact and share access to the nature trail from Square Lake Road, it would be so much easier for the people of Troy to continue to access and enjoy this land year-round. Please consider this request. Walk the trails and see what I'm talking about. Some of them are already underwater, but what's remaining makes for a nice walk. Thank you to all that are helping to preserve this precious parcel of land. The city of Troy once prided itself on the preservation of trees. It's nice to know we have good people that put up a great fight to stay true to the motto and help to create a city that sustains all residents, great and small.
Mr. Lambert, if there's another part to Ms. Bedford's email, you need to read it. The only exception we carved out is people who were going to call in. So we can't edit what someone sent in.
All right. She had a preface that started out, hello, tonight I listened to the city council meeting and it appears that they did not receive my written statement that was submitted on Monday, April 12th, 2021 to you. Can you please make sure they receive this copy before the next meeting? And what I just read was what she actually sent back in April.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
You're welcome.
I can read the next one from Koshi and Nestor George. To the Planning Department, a proposal by the Meadows to build a cluster development of 31 new homes located east of John R. north of Square Lake parcel is now in the hands of the Planning Commission. This proposal is completely out of character with this part of Troy, a character that has been shaped by decades of thoughtful zoning enforcement. This intelligent land management has been based on the guidelines of the City Comprehensive Plan. A cluster plan can, in some instances, be an effective means of conserving open space and protecting our environment. It has no validity in this particular project. It is an attempt to cram 31 homes in an area where infrastructure is non-existent. John R. is one of the narrowest, least maintained roads to navigate and maintain in the city. The woods do provide a beautiful collection of streams, ponds, and the countless number of wildlife animals that are currently under attack by this developer. In short, this cluster plan serves only a developer who is using the concept to maximize profit. By definition, developers are not environmentally conscious. It is the city's obligation to protect our lands. The subject property area is currently characterized as a nature preserve, which is the lower portion of the Troy Lake Estate, and it's fully loaded with wetlands surrounded by tall trees, plants, trees, flowers, and many smaller water streams. This area provides a home for countless wild birds, wild animals, and plants. With the existing water, the ground is not solid. Building a house will cause property damages in the future for the homeowners. If the plan is approved, it will be the destruction of the environmental atmosphere for this area. So we humbly request the Planning Committee not to approve the plan to build houses on the nature preserve so that the builders can profit. We only want the change to be in keeping with what makes sense for the neighborhood and its environment. We believe that the land should be managed both in accordance with the environmental law and with the comprehensive plans set by the city.
Okay, I have one here from, let's see, it is from Natalie Chrysopoulos. To whom it may concern, I've been a resident of the city of Troy for 23 years now and have seen plenty of changes throughout the years. but nothing has been more disappointing than watching the destruction of green spaces in Troy, particularly close to 19 Mile and DeQuinder. The lack of nature will contribute to air and water pollution, as well as the displacement of local wildlife. The destruction of Michigan's natural beauty has been going on since its colonization. I urge you to look at Washington County's Land Preservation Plan of Action. I admire their commitment to upkeeping the green spaces in their area.
You know, I'm sorry, I'm not ready for another one. I don't know what I did. I can't find them.
All right, let me see here. Okay, oh, here's one from Chuck Shepard. Hello, I'm writing in support of the Meadows of Troy project located on Square Lake Road. Two of the most requested items from Troy residents in recent years has been a desire for more ranch-style housing as residents age and to retain green space. This project does both while also making the green space more accessible. I encourage the Planning Commission to listen to what residents have been saying and approve this project. You want me to read it? Oh, did you want me to read the next one or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could help.
Go. Yeah. Do.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I just pulled it up, but I'm not ready to find one yet. You just did. I'm sorry. Can you just tell me who you read?
Yeah, Chuck Shepard, or Shepard is the name.
Okay. So there's one from Doreen, one from Camille Bedford, and one from Don and Linda Gottschalk. That's what we have left.
I can read the Don and Linda Gottschalk one.
Thank you.
Okay. This is from Don and Linda Gottschalk. As a resident of Troy for the past 34 years, I wish to register my concern about the new proposed residential development east of John R. and north of Square Lake, known as the Meadows. The proposed site area, as well as the surrounding area, is currently known as Turtle Woods. It is a true gem enjoyed by the residents of Troy as a place to walk, reflect, and enjoy nature. It is a habitat by many wild and beautiful animals. A couple years back, there was another residential development proposed with most of the woods being preserved. This was a smaller development and did not encroach on the natural terrain as much. In phase, provision was made to preserve and enhance the natural environment for man and beast alike. From looking at the proposed plans on your website, it is difficult to ascertain how much of the woods will be developed and how much will be preserved, if any. Before there can be a vote, the neighbors deserve to have a much better sense of what the builder, developer, and the city have planned for the site adjacent to our homes and so very primary to our lives. Linda and Don Gottschalk.
I can read the one from Doreen. This email is in regards to the above property. This city cannot leave one parcel untouched in the city of Troy. Once again, the TSD is greedy for its money and has no good conscience to leave any plot of land alone. This land, like all the others the TSD sold, is a wildlife sanctuary, but money gets in the way of a good conscience in this city. We don't need 31 more units anywhere in this city. It is sad and sickening that everyone involved doesn't look past the greed. The land and its trees are desperately needed for climate change. The wildlife sanctuary is not only a gem in this city, but the preservation of wildlife is so very important in a thriving municipality. It is appalling that no one in the city has a conscience, most of all the TSD, who are the educators. This is precisely why the city looks like every other built-up city now. Green space is a must where families and children grow up. But this city has no plans for that. The master plan is poor because it has no balance. Building in this city should have ceased 10 years ago. You can't get any more land once it's gone. Residents are sad and fed up. Truly, another fed up resident. And I think there's one, I'm showing there should be one more from Camille Bedford. I have that right here.
Okay.
My heart is heavy and low at the thought of the proposed development into Turtle Woods off Square Lake Road between John R. and DeQuinder. I've lived all 22 years of my life in Troy, near what is left of its wooded areas, and have found great joy and pride for the small slice of heaven that is the Troy School District's nature preserve. Although I do understand the plans in tearing down the 7 front acres of the roughly 83-acre Turtle Woods has been in the works for years, I can't help but be reminded the lengths that the city will go to for new development. Being an urban planning student at Wayne State University, the city of Troy is often the example in my education of sprawl, new age balloon frame housing, and putting development before its people. This narrative is proven true by the residential development in the past 10 years that can be seen in just a 1 mile radius around Turtle Woods, 10-acre Oak Forest of Troy neighborhood, 25-acre Bridgewater Estates neighborhood, and Hunters Park neighborhood. In looking at the zoning GIS map for what plots of land are protected, the environmental protection district zones are few and meek throughout the city. According to this map, roughly 22 square mile neighborhoods in Troy have no environmentally protected zones, of which the entire Turtle Woods plot is zoned for R1D residential housing. I, as many others in the city, find the continued abuse of Troy's natural history extremely disturbing and unnecessary. On a secondary note, I applaud all of those who fought hard for the conservation of Turtle Woods, especially Six Rivers Land Conservancy and those from the Troy School District who voted for protecting this beautiful area. Your efforts are essential in the preservation of our natural environment and absolutely do not go unnoticed. Again, I, as a concerned resident of Troy, implore the Planning Commission to reevaluate its continued and unrelenting development of the city's green spaces. Residents and wildlife are counting on it. And then she did say, I would, in a separate email, she added, I would additionally like to add that there's an ongoing petition on change.org calling to stop any development of Turtle Woods. The destruction of any amount of forested area is a tragedy, especially in a city that has already experienced so much loss of natural wildlife. The promotion in support of a small gravel parking area and only a small parking area off of John R. to further allow more residents to enjoy the beauty Turtle Woods has to offer is one of the best options going forward with this matter. I implore you to reconsider any residential development proposed.
Sounds like
I believe that we covered everyone.
Do you have another one?
Did we do all of the ones from L&B? Including the one from April 26th? I don't know if we heard that one. And then I think because it became as part of the public record, you need to include the change.org petition because it's part of the public record.
Yeah, I was going to mention that change.org petition. It says the recipients are City of Troy Planning Commission, planning at troymish.gov. Greetings, stop the destruction of Turtle Woods Preserve in Michigan. And attached to it is, it looks like about 39 pages of names, people in Troy, people around the United States, and even people around the world who signed this petition online. I assume I don't have to read all 39 pages of names.
I mean, I don't, you didn't draw out any exception in your resolution. Your resolution said the only exception was you weren't going to read emails of people who commented. So
You want me to start reading names?
no.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Did we read, did we read the prefatory email from L&B? She has a couple of different emails, and I also don't think we read both emails from the Gottschalks.
Let's see here. Let's see. I think this one from the Gottschalks didn't get read. It says, many residents who are planning to attend have decided they cannot because of the current health crises. We understand that members can make motions to vote and postpone. We think this would be the most prudent and transparent course, as well as what our governor appears to be recommending due to the current level of COVID cases in the state. I think that's the second one.
The other one from L&B, there is another one. To me, it's slightly different, but I guess, then we're getting around the 3-minute mark. They should be, they're separate emails, they're repeating the same thing, but they shouldn't be entitled to an additional 3 minutes, I would say, right?
I will leave that to the chair.
I would say each each person, as we've had in the past at our meetings, gets 3 minutes. You don't get 3 minutes and then later 3 minutes again. It's just 3 minutes for that particular person. So that's it. Mr. Roush, you get your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that as it related to the petition, the fact that the 39 pages, L&B did point out that 843 people had signed the petition. I happened to count the number of people that were Troy residents that signed the petition, and my count was 140. So for the record, that you can at least have that information in without reading off 140 or 800 names.
Thank you for that. So other than the petition, have we read all of the emails? Or three, at least?
I believe that everybody who's written in, we've read at least one of the emails that they've written.
Okay.
And we were cut off a few times for 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, were there any other public comment items from either voicemail or anything else besides these emails?
There were no voicemails, Mr. Krent.
Okay, thank you. All right, that said, I'm going to close the public hearing and then at this point, since all the points I think from public have been made, and bring it back to the commission for discussion and resolution.
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder that the Planning Commission makes a recommendation on this matter. This goes before City Council.
Yeah, we are not the final voice on this. This is a recommendation vote only. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Roush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I like the idea and the concept of this development. I think it's obviously a needed component of Troy, and everybody's voiced that. I don't agree with the comments that were made in terms of the setback, that they're all nominal. Unfortunately, there was one that I raised at the last meeting, and that was shown on the 6th page of Mr. Carlisle's memorandum, and that was the perimeter setback, where he mistakenly stated in Table 1 bulk requirements that the plan shows a minimum 40-foot setback on all property lines. And it doesn't show the 40-foot setback on the Square Lake boundary. And the zoning ordinance in section 10.4 E2A states that the 40-foot perimeter is all boundaries. So as it relates to that, that would eliminate units number 1 and 22 from the plan to bring that into compliance. I looked at, although, this is not Rochester Hills, I did look at Rochester Hills development that they did. And on that development, as I said earlier to the petitioner, that was a 7-acre development that was just the area that was being built on. The drainage and retention was done off the site, off that 7 acres. And you compare that to our 5.7 acres here that's being developed, the 12 minus the 6.28, you end up with houses being built as the plan's developed at 5.4 per acre compared to 4.1 per acre. The developer in Rochester Hills did ask for setback variance, and 10 foot in one instance from the front yard and 15 feet in the rear yards. And to give them credit, as it related to those rear yard setbacks, the majority of those boundaries abutted open space or neighborhood yards where they weren't really close. And one of the neighborhood yards was a multi-story, multi-family building, and they would have been over the parking lot, I believe, was 50 foot from the boundary. So there was quite a bit of space between that. The other thing I wanted to say was, because of the use of the property currently as a conservancy, it's being used by people that are other than just the immediately adjacent neighbors. So when you get 140 people from the city of Troy that's petitioning against this, I think it's a little bit different than just it was 140 people and they weren't using the property, then I don't know I would look at it the same way as I would as a neighbor complaining. So I think they've got some skin in the game, so to speak, in the sense that this is a school district property that presumably was purchased with taxpayer dollars or donated by a taxpayer. So I think there should be some consideration given to that. So my personal opinion is that I can live with side yard setbacks that are reduced by 3 or 4 feet. I don't know that to make a statement that the people that are buying these will be very happy with them. I'm sure that their expertise is realistic, that these people might or would accept them, be happy with them, but that's not the purpose of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is supposed to be there to protect everybody in the city and what the city's goals are. So just because the people are willing to buy it doesn't necessarily mean that it belongs there. So in short, I would support this if units 1 and 22 were dropped.
Okay. Any other comments? Go ahead, Ms. Parakis.
This is, I guess, is a question for either Mr. Carlisle or Mr. Savedant. There were a lot of people who wrote in about preserving the land, essentially, and not destroying it. But just so we understand as commissioners, right now, it's owned by the school. They're allowed to sell the property to a developer, and the developer, by right, can build residential housing on this property. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
That is correct. The underlying zoning is residential, which permits single-family residential by right.
So we have no real position to tell them to just, we can block it for other reasons. Well, we can't really. We're just recommending at this point. But my point is, it's not as if we can say, no, we're going to all of a sudden preserve this property for nature. That's sort of regulated by other agencies. Wetlands are regulated. They have to go through other things, but we as a planning commission can't really do anything at this point.
It's owned by another entity that controls it, and they will decide what they want to do with it.
Okay, thank you.
Any others before we get a resolution here? Anybody would like to offer a resolution? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Ramos. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to offer a resolution, but before that, I want to say something which is related to zoning ordinance. I don't think we are in violation with any zoning ordinance, right? Because we are not asking for any variance. Anybody can confirm that because of the setback?
There is regulatory flexibility built into these provisions that allow the city council to waiver from the underlying provisions regarding setbacks, including perimeter setbacks.
Okay. So there is no variance needed for this proposal. So the applicant doesn't have to go to the zoning board. Okay. No, I know. I just want to make sure it's clear. I would like to make.
Wait, before you make a resolution, Ms. Malala Holly would like to voice a thought here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry for interrupting. Are we done with the panelists? Are we beginning deliberations here?
Yes, we are done with the public hearing. I closed the public hearing.
Okay, I'm going to remove them. I'm going to remove them from the screen here. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Okay, Ms. Malala Holly, you had a comment before the resolution?
Yeah, quick comment here. I think after listening to all the presentations 2 weeks back and now, the side deviation, which I was slightly worried and concerned about in the first presentation when we first got to see this proposal to now, I guess I'm a little comfortable now. I'm in a much more comfortable position to agree with the fact that the deviance that Mr. Tagle also helped clarify is okay. I don't want to lose any more natural space. And with all the other, with all the deviations that we were talking about, and if it's going to go into the wooded area, if it's going to go into the preserved natural wooded area, then no, this is it. No more land grabbing, no more extension of homes into the preserve. That is something that I just wanted to make sure that we are very clear. And finally, to also ask how we can, I don't know how we can do this, but some kind of a request to the residents to not use harsh chemicals. Being in such close proximity, it is very near and dear to me to see that these woods, where the houses are so close by, can in the future be definitely impacted. So I don't know how we can ask that to be put in wording. But that is something that I'm very, very particular about, that we have some kind of assurance from them that these chemicals, which will drain ultimately into those areas and does impact the natural life, if somehow we can protect that. Thank you.
Any other comments before our resolution? I just want to say one thing on the chemicals. Unless, I hate to make an isolated zone where we have this particular development get extensive restrictions on lawn care use, chemical use for lawns, where we don't do that for the rest of the whole city. There are lots of places in the city, including my own backyard, where I don't happen to use chemicals on our backyard, but we have a running stream in the springtime going through there. So, how can we can certainly recommend that the Homeowners Association utilize the least toxic chemicals for their lawns, and, but how, I kind of hate to create a precedent where we're telling a development that they are singled out for chemicals where all the rest of the city is not. It just doesn't equate to me as a fair deal for this particular development. But that said, who would like to go ahead with a resolution? Mr. Rahman, please go ahead.
Okay. Resolved, the Planning Commission hereby recommends to the City Council that the Meadows of Troy site condominium, one family residential cluster, 31 units / lots, east of John R., north of Square Lake, parcel 882001300016, section 1, approximately 12 acres in size, currently zone R-1D, one family residential district, be approved for the following reasons. 1, the cluster development better protects the site's natural resources than if the site were not developed as a cluster. 2, the cluster development better protects the adjacent properties than if the site were not developed as a cluster. 3, the cluster development is compatible with adjacent properties. 4, the site can be adequately served with municipal water and sewer. 5, the applicant is providing a public parking lot and a trailhead to preserve trails. 6, the applicant is providing a housing product with first floor master bedroom and bath desired by the community. By it finally resolved, the Planning Commission recommends the following design considerations. 1, provide a new wetland assessment or extension of Eagle. Provide maintenance agreement for the public parking lot. Provide easement over Turtle Woods for access to the public parking lot. Number 4, provide landscaping on east and west sides with trees for privacy. And number 5, to include in the manual of in the homeowners manual, that statement that they should not be using chemicals that's harmful for the animals and the ecology.
Do we have a second on that? I don't see a second. My objection would be you're saying they can't use chemicals that could be harmful to the environment. I'll tell you, any chemical at all used, it could be as simple as mosquito repellent or something that, you're getting into an area where you're basically dictating to this one particular, you're singling out one particular area of Troy to have higher requirements than any other part of the city. And I can't go along with that personally. You can recommend that they use the least toxic chemicals. There are some than others, but to tell them they can't use any on this land, you'd have to tell the Parks and Rec Department they can't do it. You'd have to tell the golf course they can't do it. You'd have to go right down every single property in Troy. And I don't think you want to make that fight.
Okay. So can I make a little modification to the proposal in that case based on the feedback?
Yes, please do.
So I would change it, and I would just take that chemicals used provision out from the resolution, because I think we need further discussion for that. And I think that can be eliminated. So is that good enough?
That's fine with me. Could we get a second?
Second.
Mr. Lambert. May I have a roll call, please, Ms. Sarnicki?
Ms. Parakis,
No.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
No.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
No, for the reason I believe the environmental amendment proposed by our fellow council member is correct. And I vote no.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Malahali.
No.
You have 5 yeses, 4 nos.
Is that, Ms. Dufresne, is that, do we need just a simple majority?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Mr. Grant, because this
Thank
is just
you.
a recommending.
Okay, then this item is approved. This resolution is approved. Okay, next item is number 8. Public hearing, conditional rezoning, CR JPL N 2019-003, proposed Livernois Court, east side of Livernois, north of Big Beaver, 88-20-22-301-007 and 88-20-22-301-008 and 88-20-22-301-009, Section 22, from R1C, one family residential, to BB, Big Beaver Road District.
Mr. Chairman, I may have missed, or I believe the agenda had the St. Mark's ahead of this.
Okay, you're right. No, it's my mistake. I'm going to reread that. That's number 8. I skipped number 7. I'm sorry. Thanks for the catch. This one is preliminary site plan review, file number SP 2020-0014, proposed St. Mark's Coptic Church, west of Livernois, south of Waddles, 3603 Livernois, Section 21, currently zoned R1B, one family residential district. Go ahead, Mr. Carlisle, or Mr. Savadat.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh boy, I'm getting...
Share my screen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, this is a continuation of the public hearing we had 2 weeks ago. The applicant is St. Mark's Church. They're located on the west side of Livernois, just north of Big Beaver. The addition is to an existing church at the back of the existing site. The site is located at 3603 Livernois Road, again north of Big Beaver. It's zoned R1B, and the proposed addition is a place of worship. It does require a special use permit. The site plan is in front of you. It's a little bit hard to read on the screen, but the existing worship center or church is outlined in green. The proposed addition is outlined in red. The proposed addition is a 2-story addition that includes, and I'll go through the floor plan here in a second, includes a basketball facility as well as classrooms for Sunday school. The proposed addition to the facility complies with all the R1B zoning requirements. The floor plan is shown in front of you. It's a 2-story addition. The first floor includes a basketball facility, 7 classrooms, and a kitchen. There are also bleachers as part of the basketball facility. The second story includes 5 classrooms, a multi-purpose room, 2 offices, men's and women's restroom, and a storage room, as well as the basketball facility is going to be 2 stories. So that's what half of the second story is open-ended for the basketball court. In relation to the operation of the site, we did express a confirmation from the applicant that the use of the basketball court would not concur at the same times as the use of the place of worship for mass. And this is mostly for parking considerations. And they did note that they will not use the facilities concurrently. In addition, we want to ensure that the new space, the times of operation, specifically with regards to noise, as well as lighting upon adjacent properties. And we had a lengthy discussion about that at the last planning commission meeting, that they were not proposing to go late in the evening, and lighting was subdued and screened by adjacent, by landscaping. The applicant has not submitted a detailed landscape plan, but according to the renderings, there is building landscaping proposed, and so we are asking for a detailed landscape plan as part of the final site plan submittal. We spent a lot of time discussing with the applicant buffering and screening. This is looking at the site from the parking lot, looking east to the facility. The facility basically is proposed as a block here in yellow. You'll note that there's significant screening both along the northern and southern property line that really screen this building from those adjacent properties. This is a view of the stub road that stubs into the facility from the north. You can see there's a very dense screening along there. And this is a view of the stub road that stubs to the south. And again, you can see a very dense screening along there. With regards to lighting, the applicant is proposing 2 different lamp types, both with 2 different fixtures. Both are downward directed, and they do meet the zoning ordinance requirement. And we do note that it appears the applicant designed the building so that the highest windows are approximately 20 feet above grade, and those would be screened by the adjacent mature landscaping that I just showed previously. This is the a rendering or elevation of the building, the long side of the building along the south elevation. The new portion of the building is that on the left side of my dashed red line. The existing facility is on the right-hand side. The applicant has tried to match architectural style consistently as well as materials. These are some conceptual renderings. This is looking downward at the site, looking to the east to the site. The existing facility is in the back here. It's kind of grayed out. The new facility is in this kind of tannish brown brick color. This is a street level view of the elevation looking back from the site into the parking lot. This is another view of looking at the addition from the parking lot itself. And this is the rendering at night. There are standards that the Planning Commission is to consider with regards to this facility. Provide the applicant can explain the satisfaction, the use of the building, particularly on evenings, and it won't impact adjacent properties to north and south. We do feel it meets all the special use requirements. The primary use of the building on site continues and will remain a place of worship. There's an existing dense screening to the south and north that should screen the proposed addition. with limitations, the co-occupancy of the main sanctuary and the new accessory facility. The new accessory should not impact existing traffic to the site out of normal operations. The addition of the existing building will not impact public services. The accessory building does not impact the overall environment. That being said, we are recommending the Planning Commission approve the project with the conditions that the applicant agrees there will be no concurrent use of the facilities. And lastly, the applicant provides a detailed landscape plan as part of the final site plan. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mr. Carlisle? Okay, we'd like the next person then to speak is the applicant, to hear any further information that we maybe haven't heard or from Mr. Carlisle, or other things you may want to add.
Good morning, or actually good afternoon or good evening. This is Harold Rumley with Design Team Plus. Am I able to share my screen? Yes, I am. All right. Thank you so much, Ben, for presenting that for us. As Ben pointed out, the existing principal building is what we have shown here in the blue. That currently is about 22,000 and some change in square feet. The yellow area is our proposed addition, which is 2 stories, and the first floor, with including the gymnasium, is 18,526 feet. The second floor will be occupying about 8,980 feet in that area. Height-wise, our proposed addition is going to be approximately 26 feet above finished grade. The existing daycare, which is to the north, along the north property line, that is currently 15'4", and along the south side of that building, it's 19 foot. So we're only looking at an increase of approximately about 7 feet in height, give or take. The existing sanctuary main portion of the building is 28 foot above finished grade. The dome and tower at the east end of the building is 76 feet tall. So we are substantially lower than what the actual existing church in the sanctuary is currently. From the property lines, our north side of our building is currently 39.4 feet off the property line. From the south property line, we are 83.8 feet. We meet all the requirements for setback. I do want to point out that there are no windows along the north side of the gymnasium that will be facing the properties to the north. We do have some classroom windows on the first and second floor, a total of 4 on the second floor and 4 on the first floor. And again, as mentioned by Mr. Carlisle, is that these classrooms are being used for Sunday school in conjunction with the celebration and mass taking place within the sanctuary. The gym is going to be used not at the same time in which the sanctuary is being used for any type of tournaments or games. However, during their times of worship, mass, and in the sanctuary, this will be used for pre and post functions for gathering of the congregation. They currently do have a very small fellowship hall that cannot accommodate the size of their congregation. So this will actually aid to that. I do know in our previous discussion, there were some comments about amount of light level that will be bleeding onto the south properties and north properties. In our photometric charts, as you can see, we have absolutely 0 foot candles of light that is going beyond the property lines on both north and south elevation. Again, we do have windows in the gymnasium. Tops of those windows are approximately about 17 feet. We do have a large landscape berm on our south property line. That berm's a little over 4 feet in height, and there is about 95% coverage of evergreens, and those trees range between 16 to 20 feet in height. So we feel confident we will not be having a light bleed going onto the neighboring properties. That's being said. The building is going to use similar materials of the existing sanctuary, limestone accents along the top. The main field brick will be beige in color, matching the existing sanctuary. And then we do have a rust color foundation brick that's going to be creating a perimeter along the south side as well as the east. but we will terminate it coming along towards the west side facing the parking lot. We will also be incorporating a metal insulated panel with also some stainless steel accents, which will then pick up on the details which are currently on the patinted copper domes on the existing sanctuary today. We did have some conversations in our last presentation regarding sound and noise transmission. As mentioned then, we are looking at using a precast insulated concrete wall panel system for the project. And in review of that, that has a sound transmission class of 60. What does that mean? If you look at classroom design for schools, any classrooms which are adjacent to a gymnasium, an auditorium, or a swimming pool is required to have a sound transmission class of 60 for that wall assemble. Basically, that will mitigate any sound transfer that would disrupt that classroom adjacent to it. I just want to point out again, we are over almost 40 feet off the property line to the north and over 80 feet off the property line to the south. Any noise that may be coming through the walls or the glass is going to be diminished greatly by the time it reaches the neighboring properties. Our windows, again, with sound in mind, we are looking on using a insulated, both laminated glass glazing. Again, it'll reduce on noise, but also be safety features for the gym when the game is happening. So in case a ball does bounce off of it, we don't have to worry about any breakage. We did look at safety of the occupants by placing a railing system along the sidewalk at the parking lot. Again, no doors leading directly in the parking lot. It's a 90-degree turn, and then they have to filter either way past this railing, again, giving them ample time to watch as cars are approaching or leaving the parking lot. We did do a night shot. It was shown in Ben's presentation, showing the lighting coming through the windows. Again, very minimal areas in which that is happening. And then probably more than likely the classroom building that's not being utilized during the time of a game, those lights would more than likely not be on at that portion of the time. Here's a view from the south looking north. As you can see, the dense evergreen coverage and as well as the berm that the evergreens are located on. And then here's a view of the property from the north looking south. Heavy coverage at the end of the street, a little bit lighter over here, but again, we do have some deciduous trees which are going to be blocking the view of the addition. And the actual gymnasium itself is approximately over 95 feet away from the north property line because it is on the opposite side of the existing daycare that is there. I do know there were some questions and comments that were brought up regarding stormwater detention retention. When the site was originally designed, it was intended on having this addition be placed in the future. So the stormwater system has been designed accordingly to accommodate the additional runoff from the roof surface that's being placed on here with the addition. At that point, I will open this up for any comments or questions that you may have for me.
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions or comments for the presenter? Ms. Malala-Holly.
You're muted.
She'll get there. There you go.
Sorry. My apologies. Two quick questions for you. Thank you for coming over and giving us the presentation again. One question is, if I stand at the second floor window, as we see on the screen here that you are sharing with us, if I stand at the second floor window and look out of the window, what am I going to see? Not considering the fact that it is dark outside, but let's say it's light outside. What am I going to see? Am I going to see a tree line, or am I going to see some houses and windows?
Well, you will see predominantly the evergreen tree line because with a 20-foot tree on a 4-foot berm, we're about 26 feet tall, which is actually the height of the overall building. Finished floor to finished floor is approximately 12 feet, standard person of 5 to 5.5 feet. Their eyeballs are at 5 feet. They're only going to be 17 feet above grade, which means you still have at least another 8 to 9 feet of green tree line above your eyesight. You will see the rooftops of the neighboring residents, but you will not be seeing within their backyards.
Okay. These windows that you have right now on these buildings, the rendition that is, they are transparent, not opaque.
That is correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other hands going up? I see, whoop, one went up and then went down. Okay, Mr. Rahman.
Yeah, I think in the presentation, it was mentioned that there will be no window on the basketball court side.
Along the north property line, there's no windows facing north on the basketball.
The view that we are seeing it right now, is it south side?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Do you have any view on the north side in this presentation?
This is your view from the north side. The only windows that are here are the 2 classrooms up and 2 classrooms down, which again are only going to be utilized during the times of the sanctuary, which are mostly taking place during the day for their services.
So where is the basketball court? It's like inside?
You can't see it from this side because it is stepped back over 25 feet from this wall inbound. So if we look at it from here, here is the existing north wall. The blue is the existing 1-story daycare area. The gymnasium is tucked in over here back. You know, the reason for putting it in this location versus this location was taking in consideration the adjacency to the neighbors to the north, since that property line is only 39.4 feet versus the 83 and some change of footage of setback on the south side.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. If you don't raise your hand, just shout out. I can't. I don't see no one else. All right. Thank you for that presentation. Let's bring it back to the commission for discussion and resolution. And you just, yeah, raise your hand. There you go. Oh, Mr. Faison got his hand up first.
Thanks. Just a question on the landscaping and the screening. And this is, I think, for staff, for Ben and maybe Brent. I mean, there were some comments we got in the emails about the lack of screening in certain areas, which seemed inconsistent with some of the views that were shown. I mean, it is the church in compliance with their current landscape plan?
Mr. Faison, in my opinion, yes, they're current with the required landscaping. They're adding landscaping where they need to. In addition, there's that dense screening now. That being said, because this is a special use, if the Planning Commission feels that there's not sufficient screening in a particular area, they can require screening in order to comply with the standards of the special use. That being said, I haven't heard anything about any specific single area that needs additional landscaping. But if the Planning Commission has a point where they'd like additional landscaping, we can discuss that. And on discussions with the applicant, I don't think that they would have any concern about adding some additional landscaping if need be as part of the project.
Okay, thank you. And again, you said they are in compliance with the current landscaping plan.
That's correct.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other thoughts before okay, you go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Savadant, I assume you probably looked at some of the emails that came in on this topic, and I was wondering if any of them were referred on to the appropriate city departments to investigate. Some of the residents complained about trash and not keeping up to date the landscape, I guess, as Commissioner Faison had also mentioned.
I visited the site based on reading some of those emails. I found the site to be well maintained. I walked the entire southern perimeter of the landscape berm with the trees. there were 0 trees that were dead or dying along the southern property line. I would agree with Mr. Renlinger. Those trees are very high. I took some photographs. They provide a pretty close to a wall of screening. There was a comment that the church had filled in some wetlands, and I researched previous site plans that were reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission dating back approximately 20 years. There was no reference in any of the site plans of even having wetlands on the site. Our GIS map confirmed that the wetlands were a significant distance to the west of the parking lot. So I looked at a lot of the allegations, Mr. Lambert, and I was unable to confirm any of them.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so at this point I want to open up the public hearing portion of this item. And the first thing I'd like to do is see who's of our attendees that are here to speak virtually or by phone. Do we have any that are, I see a Mark Nassar's got his hand up. We're going to let him in.
Mr. Nassar represents the church, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, this is a public hearing section. Is the church part of the public hearing, or the applicant, or how does that work?
And certainly, Mr. Chairman, I rose my hand much earlier to answer a question that was asked to the extent that there was any need from a church representative is all.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any public comment, comment from the public for this hearing? I don't see any on the attendee area. Do we have any phone-ins or?
There are no voicemails, Mr. Crunt.
Thank you.
And I believe there is one public comment that was emailed.
Okay. Who would like to read that one public comment email?
I can read them. There were 3 authors of emails. David Bemis wrote in 3 times though, so I guess we should start the timer and I will try to get through his emails. Okay. Should we go that way?
Yeah, it sounds
Mr. Savidant, your timing. Okay, this is from David Bemis on April 4th. I am opposed to all additional building and or parking surface at St. Mark's Egyptian Church on Livernois. They are a private social club existing to benefit their members only. The organization enjoys a tax-free status while consuming city resources. Other organizations like the Shriners with their hospitals do much more for the general population without a tax-free status. The organization's signage says nothing about other religions or ethnicities being welcome. My wife and her nephew, both Western European Orthodox Christians, attended once. They were not greeted, acknowledged, or even smiled at. At the Protestant church that I used to attend, there were greeters at all exterior doors and at the sanctuary entrance and a coffee hour for mingling. A visitor could not attend without being greeted, both entering and exiting, and acknowledged. This may also be discrimination on the part of this private social club. They are polluters. I personally found where they dumped used engine oil and an oil filter and other junk in the woods and buried the oil before I could get an ordinance officer there in about 15 minutes. They do not maintain their properties. The original building looks to be in despair. Is it even usable? The organization owns several residential properties on the south side of Kirk Lane Drive. These homes are eyesores, detracting from the neighborhood. The last time I was on their property before their no trespassing sign, the house looked to be a mess. They have not maintained the plantings on the north or south side of their properties. They falsely said they would plant an evergreen screen on the berm on the north side of their property and did not. I am sure a building as tall as a gymnasium will be an eyesore in a residential neighborhood. If allowed to add buildings, the organization is likely to come back saying they need more parking because of increased attendance. Added water runoff from these and added buildings and parking from precipitation may overwhelm storm drains, causing pollution and flooding. This could also cause water damage to the city park. I have been told by neighbors whose property abuts the organization properties of infringement on property line setbacks, of noise, trespassing on their yard by persons from the organization, dumping engine oil on the ground, and being disrespectful of the neighbors, giving them the middle finger salute. In summary, the Coptic Church may be discriminatory, They have demonstrated their lack of property maintenance. They are polluters. Their proposed building will not fit the neighborhood. They are not good neighbors, and their additions may cause water damage to the infrastructure and surrounding areas. They have more or less given the middle finger salute to the city of Troy and to the neighborhoods. I will try to get to his next one because we're on the 3 minutes. I plan to attend, this is April 12th. I plan to attend and speak at the meeting, but in case I cannot get in due to social distancing, the following are my comments. Coptic Church. I regard this organization not as a church, but as a private social club limited to Egyptians. My wife and her nephew, who look like and are Western European Orthodox Christians, attended and were not welcomed. Abutting neighbors have or may describe their issues of prior building without zoning or permits, trespassing, lot line setback infringement, noise, lack of installation and maintenance of screening, landscaping, and dumping engine oil on the ground. They do not maintain their properties. The building fronting Livernois, berm or promised and never installed screening or landscaping, rental properties that they own. Okay, so that's all that we can read from Mr. Bemis. There was a third one, but we'll move on. There's one from Marianne Howell, and I believe her husband Joseph, or I don't know, sorry, Joseph and Marianne Howell. Okay. We are opposed to all additional building and or parking surfaces at St. Mark Coptic Church on Livernois. They do not maintain their properties. The church owns several residential properties on the south side of Kirk Lane Drive. These homes are quite shabby, detracting from the neighborhood. The evergreen screen on the north side of their property behind us, required by the city after they disregarded the city directive to retain existing vegetation, is not on the berm, but right up on the property line and has not been maintained. It is very scraggly and offers little to no privacy. The silt fence that they erected for an entire season while they upgraded their illegal gravel parking lot blocked sunlight from our ground level plantings and completely wiped them out, further reducing our privacy. The height of a gymnasium would be aesthetically disruptive in a residential neighborhood, and the footprint would be huge. If allowed to add buildings, the church is likely to need more parking because of increased attendance and the parking spaces that may be lost because of such construction. Homeowners whose property abuts the church boundaries, including ourselves, have complained to the authorities of infringement on property of noise and of trespassing on our yards by persons from the church. Other churches of their size and attendance, such as Woodside and Zion, have been built on much larger properties with much more ample parking. The Coptic Church keeps trying to add more facilities to its site, which is not even large enough to contain those it already has. In the 1990s, council member Robin Beltramini had the foresight to see much of this, calling it a flawed plan, and was one of the dissenters on the commission that approved a cathedral-sized church in our neighborhood. The church has a history of modifications and construction without permits or zoning. For example, the aforementioned gravel parking lot, clear-cutting existing vegetation against the order to retain it, etc. In conclusion, the Coptic Church has demonstrated their lack of property maintenance and complete lack of respect for the neighborhood and the city they occupy. Joseph and Marianne Howell. And I believe there's just one from Susan. Okay.
It's from Suzanne Conover. It was April 8th. Email that said, I'm not in favor of St. Mark's expanding an already narrow parcel of property with more land development. The additional building will not preserve or improve upon the quality of the residential neighborhood to which the church borders. How will this addition add value and improvement to our neighborhood? For me, this will be a negative impact on the neighborhood and the abutting properties will lose value. The expansion of the parking completed in 2019 has not added any value to my home value. I now have more trash in my backyard. Light pollution from the parking lot lighting and the green fence put in place to provide separation has died and has become an eyesore. The Troy Community Center is also close to this address. Why would the city planning department allow another gymnasium so close? Please do not allow this permit for special use of St. Mark's to add a gymnasium and classroom addition to the existing church location. Suzanne Conover, 73 Kirk Lane Drive.
I do believe that completes the email portion of the public comment for this topic. You're muted.
I was unmuted and I hit the mute button by half. Okay. Since we've covered all of the public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing and I'll bring it back to our commission to discuss it and propose a resolution. So any comments regarding this particular project? Go ahead, Ms. Parakas.
In general, I think that the petitioner has provided a lot of, the plan as presented to us seems to cover everything. I've driven through the property twice now, based on the comments that I received from the surrounding neighbors to see what it looked like myself. And I didn't really see, I thought that the landscaping was kept up. So I do not actually have additional landscaping suggestions to make. I guess I would just encourage, I'm not trying to say that the neighbors aren't having issues, but I would just say that, they're encouraged to call the city if there are violations that need to be looked into, but from what I saw at the time, at this moment in time, it seemed to be well kept.
Thank you. Any other points of discussion or comments? Would someone like to propose a oh, go ahead, Ms. Mahala. Boy, it's getting a little late. My mouth is not working as well as it used to. Go ahead, Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you, Chairman Krent. Just a quick question before the resolution, of course, is these basketball games that are going to be held. Of course, there are going to be participants, attendees, spectators, and the noise level after the game when everybody's leaving, cars and people alike, is going to be there. What does the church or how does the church plan to, I don't know, if possible, I don't know whether it's possible at all, but to limit some of this noise that might then filter into the neighborhoods if the games are being held quite late into the evening or into the night when they get over?
Would someone from the church like to comment on that? Answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so certainly our mission is always to be good neighbors. It's a little disheartening to hear what some people have written, and certainly I would welcome walking that property or any of the adjacent neighbors' property personally as a board member of the church. Although I will echo what Brent said. I walk it all the time and I don't see any issues like that, and there are factual inaccuracies. We pulled every permit, I promise you. I went and picked them up myself and things like that. But on this topic specifically, security is a major topic. Good neighboring is a very important topic. We have upgraded our security system on the entire site. There will not be spectators. I hope we play an NCAA game here one day, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that this is going to be small recreational type games. Into the evening, there will never be games that would disturb our neighbors. We have access now only by card entry, and that is going to be continued even within the building itself. The master plan, and Harold can explain more if necessary, is to block the areas of the gymnasium portion so that even if someone has access to another portion of the building, they will not be able to access the gymnasium without authorization from the powers that be within the church. So it will not. We're happy to do anything to be a good neighbor. And if there are any issues, call the city and call us first. I wish you would, so that we can work through any issues that there are. And I will reiterate that the plan is to make sure that we are good neighbors and make sure that we stop any noise, if there is any noise, and control it, again, with the sound barrier and the setbacks that are already established.
Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, if the commission is ready for a resolution, I'm ready to offer one.
Any other comments before Mr. Lambert speaks? Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the proposed St. Mark's Coptic Church Gymnasium and Classroom Addition, west side of Livernois, south of Waddles, parcel 88-20-21-277-036, section 21, zoned R1B, which is one family residential district, be granted subject to the following conditions. Applicant agrees there will be no concurrent use of site facilities that should require parking to exceed 322 spaces. Events or uses that draw users to the facility, such as basketball tournaments or other large gathering events, shall not be held concurrently with regularly scheduled church activities such as Mass. And number 2, applicant provides a detailed landscape review as part of the final site plan.
Do I have a second on that? Okay, I'll go with Mr. Tagle this time. Roll call, please, Ms. Sarnicki.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Roush,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krant,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is number 8. This is public hearing conditional rezoning. CR JPLN 2019-003, proposed Livernois Court, east side of Livernois, north of Big Beaver, 88-20-22-301-007, 88-20-22-301-008, and 88-20-2301-009, Section 22, from R1C, one family residential, to BB, Big Beaver Road District. Mr. Carlisle, are you going to give us the overview?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As noted, this is a proposed conditional rezoning. The site outlined in red includes 3 parcels. It's located at 3364 Livernois. It's just south of the recently constructed senior housing facility and across from the community center of Troy. The applicant proposes to rezone those 3 parcels from one family residential to Big Beaver. We do note the site includes 1 existing house, wetlands, woodlands, and a 100-year floodplain. With regards to zoning, the zoning in the area is kind of a mixed bag. To the north is a PUD, and the use of that senior living facility, as I noted. To the south and to the east are both R1E, one family residential, and R1C, one family residential. And to the west is community facility, parks and recreation. Part of it is Big Beaver to the south east corner, and Big Beaver zoning to the southwest corner and the northwest corner are both Big Beaver zoning districts. In their conditions, as part of the conditional rezoning, they've also offered 3 conditions. The first is that development to occur only in the areas outside of the 100-year floodplain and wetland delineation. 100-year floodplain and wetland areas to be treated as conservation and not to be developed under the proposed rezoning request. Number 2, the proposed parcels will provide a 40-foot easement to the parcel to the north in case of future development. Easement to satisfy egress guidelines for such development. I'll have more discussion on each of these in a second. And the third is the development will include only attached multifamily buildings. Such buildings shall not exceed 35 feet in height, and shall have a minimum setback of 35 feet to R1 parcels. A couple of questions of the conditions that I have that the applicant offered was, first, what does development mean? Does it include site grading within that 100-year floodplain and wetland? And will the applicant, how does the applicant plan on preserving that area? Will it be through a land conservation easement, a land donation, some other means of the floodplain and wetland area? How are we going to preserve that area in perpetuity is basically my questions. Thirdly is, their applicant has actually included 3 parcels, and I'll show you what the site plan is in a second. But one of their conditions is that if the parcel to the north, there would be an easement to access that parcel. But if that parcel is already included in the rezoning request, I don't think this condition of an easement is necessary as part of their conditions. The Planning Commission had discussion of this application December of 2020. At that meeting, there was discussion about the conservation easement, the perpetuity, how it would be maintained, the height of the multifamily structure and how that compares to a 2-story residential home, the transition to multifamily from single family, the ownership of the adjacent and surrounding parcels, the viability of the parcel in total to be developed, the creeping of Big Beaver zoning district moving from Big Beaver north as well as east into the single family residential neighborhood, whether there are alternatives to rezone, develop parcels, or preserve green space. One of the things there was confusion about, and I think that's why the condition number 3 was put on here, was Mr. Black's property, who owns the parcel that's the northernmost parcel that's actually now included, was not included in the first conditional rezoning agreement. This has been changed, and Mr. Black's property has been added, so now it's those 3 parcels in total. The applicant has submitted a conditional use, a conceptual site plan for informational purposes only. The 3 parcels are outlined here. The northern parcel I spoke to about this was Mr. Black's parcel. In the initial proposal, only the 2 southern parcels here were included in the rezoning. He has since added that 3rd parcel to this inclusion to bring up the entire area just south of the PUD as being suggested for conditional rezoning. The area outlined here in green is the 100-year floodplain line, and there's some regulated wetlands in the back of the site. So the applicant proposes to maintain all development outside of this 100-year floodplain. But again, our question is, what does development mean? And lastly, how does he propose to preserve this in perpetuity? We'll note that the applicant is proposing 16 units on the southern parcel, 24 units in total. We can't confirm the unit layout and yield. We do note that if this is approved, it will have to come in through a site plan that will be reviewed by the Planning Commission in the future. So the rezoning does not lock the applicant into this layout, this site plan, this number of units, etc. With regards to the master plan notes this area as single-family residential. So while we note the proposed use as Big Beaver is more intense than the uses identified, it is consistent with future land uses of parcels located to the west. We do note, we've had a lot of discussion about this internally with both Director Saudant, myself, and others. And we do find that due to traffic, surrounding land uses, and the limited developable area due to the wetlands and the floodplain, it's unlikely that this parcel would ever be developed for single-family residential. It simply just does not yield the number of units to develop the site. We also note that this section of Livernois has a number of different uses that front on Livernois. This includes offices, places of worship, community facility, also family residential and single-family residential uses up and down this section of Livernois. We do note also that due to the inclusion, hopefully, of a conservation easement or whatever the applicant proposes, that will protect the wetlands, the 100-year floodplain, and does provide an appropriate transition from this use to the single-family on the south and to the east of this property. There are 5 standards that the Planning Commission should consider as part of the rezoning. We do find that the proposed rezoning is consistent with elements of the master plan. As noted, due to traffic, surrounding land uses, and limited developable area, it is unlikely that the site would ever be developed for single family. The applicant notes they are preserving in perpetuity the wetland and 100-year floodplain. Protecting the 100-year floodplain in the wetland area does protect properties to the east, and it does provide a transition from more intense development to the less intense residential areas. So that, without that being said, we are asking the applicant confirm what development means and does it include site grading. How does the applicant plan on preserving that area that they're indicating? And lastly, if they should remove that condition number 2 if 3364 Livernois is included in the rezoning request. So recommend the Planning Commission consider the application, hold a public hearing, and consider any public comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Carlisle, maybe a quick refresher for all the commissioners, especially the newer ones, about conditional rezoning and what the role of the commission is as far as asking for changes in a conditional rezoning plan.
Mr. Chairman, I am so sorry for interrupting. You must not have seen my hand raised. Before we begin any discussion, Mr. Rauch has something he needs to address.
Oh.
I believe that's why his hand is raised as well.
Oh, yeah, I see his hand there, but I didn't. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Rauch.
Yes, I wanted to point out that I attended the December hearing where this was presented previously as a member of the public and made comments at that time. The comments I made at that time were based upon the information that was presented at the time and don't reflect any predetermined opinion on the development.
Okay. Mr. Hudson has his hand up too. Go ahead, Mr. Hudson. Then
Thank
Mr.
you.
Marcus.
Am I led to believe that in a future meeting of the Planning Commission, there will be a discussion or a proposal to extend the Big Beaver development area to the north, which would abut this property?
Mr. Savant, you want to answer that? I'm not aware of any discussion, but you may be aware of something I'm not of.
That is not proposed at this time, Mr. Hudson.
I understand it's not proposed at this time. Is there a consideration of that perhaps happening?
Not at this time, no.
All right. Well, let me ask one more question then. Assuming that it happened, would that change the zoning of this particular proposal before us tonight? Would he have an option of changing the zoning if he'd been given conditional rezoning?
Well, so they're seeking rezoning of the subject parcel to BB Big Beaver. It is not contiguous. It would not be contiguous to other areas that are zoned Big Beaver. Now we are initiating a master plan update process, and that's something we could certainly discuss during the master plan update process. That is the future land use component of this discussion. But there's no discussion. There's nothing ongoing right now that would extend the Big Beaver district northward to this site.
Okay, hypothetically, let's assume that it does happen. Would that change in zoning permit the applicant to change his plans if a conditional rezoning were approved tonight to a different type of building?
The applicant would be if the applicant were to voluntarily offer conditions that were ultimately approved by City Council and incorporated into a conditional rezoning agreement, the applicant would be bound by those conditions.
So he couldn't change his mind later if a change in the Big Beaver district occurred, touching his property.
If the applicant sought to do something that was inconsistent with the conditions that were voluntarily offered, agreed upon by City Council and incorporated into a conditional rezoning agreement, wanted to do something different than that, the applicant would have to go back before the Planning Commission and City Council, basically through the whole process again, to make any amendments.
Okay, thank you.
How do I do, Julie?
Well, yeah. Can I answer Mr. Lambert's question, Mr. Krant?
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Yeah,
Okay,
I was going to go
thank you.
back to Mr. Lambert.
So the conditional rezoning is a rather new zoning tool. I actually call it a tool because it really is a really creative tool that's been offered to municipalities in the recent update to the Zoning Enabling Act. Before this what I call tool was enacted, basically the Planning Commission was only allowed, and cities were only allowed the option of approving a rezoning to allow all the rights under that underlying zoning change to be permitted. So if a property was zoned to Big Beaver, the applicant would be able to develop all the uses, all of the bulk regulations. They could develop in that wetland area. They could develop in the 100-year floodplain. And the city, if it approved that rezoning, would have to allow all of those limitations. What a conditional rezoning does is it allows the applicant themselves to place their own conditions upon the rezoning. The Planning Commission can't put those upon the applicant. They have to recommend themselves. That would limit what they would normally be allowed to do if the rezoning was approved. So in this case, the Big Beaver district would allow up to 4 stories in height. The applicant has self-limited themselves to 35 feet. The Big Beaver district, in theory, would allow them to develop in the wetland in the 100-year floodplain. The applicant, through the conditional rezoning statement, has said that they will not develop in that 100-year floodplain. So it's a restriction upon their own rights if this property were to be rezoned to Big Beaver based on these conditions. Ms. Dufresne, is there anything you would add to that I missed?
No, I think you did a great job explaining that, Mr. Carlisle. The only thing I would add is this particular conditional rezoning is different than others that this board has seen In the past, typically we have the conditional rezoning agreement tied to a specific site plan. So this is different because it's not tied to a specific site plan. It's just tied to verbal conditions. So from the legal perspective, if this is approved and the conditions that are offered by the applicant are approved, we need to make sure that that language is very tight, just for the concerns that Mr. Hudson is raising.
I'll just add one thing to Ms. Dufresne's point. While a little bit maybe uncommon in Troy that you actually have a site plan as a condition of a conditional rezoning, it's not necessarily typical, and it's more on the rarer side to have that as a condition of approval in many of the other communities that we work in. It's not required by the state ordinance, State Enabling Act. It's something that simply the city of Troy has utilized in the past to require a site plan with it. Obviously offered by the applicants, but it is not a requirement. But to Ms. Dufresne's point, we want to make sure that if this does go forward, the language is very tight in terms of what those conditions are.
Right, and I'm not casting aspersions on the fact. I don't want anyone to think that I'm casting aspersions on the fact that there is not a site plan. It's just for those members who have seen conditional rezonings before, this one might look a little different because there is no site plan associated with it. That's not good or bad, it's just different. And I wanted the members to recognize that difference.
Thank you. Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, I have a question. I drove over there to get a sort of feel for the area, and there's that senior living, I think it's called like Anthropology maybe, that's just north of this site. Would you by any chance know the height of that at its highest point? I think we're at Fronts Livernois. It looks like it's a couple stories, and then it sort of tapers down to maybe 1 story, but in feet, so we can compare what the 35 would be.
Ms. Prax, I don't have the top of my head. I can go back and look at my earlier reports. I'm at my office, so if you give me a couple minutes, I can look for it while other questions are being answered.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any other comments while we're gathered here? Go ahead, Mr. Roush.
Yeah, I have a question. Given that the master plan is going to be looked at soon, one question would be, would this be better suited to be addressed at that time when it can be looked at more comprehensively? And I guess that'd be my first question for Brent, and I've got a follow-up.
Well, we're processing an application that was submitted over a year ago. So I would say that it's ripe now. We have a valid master plan and a valid zoning ordinance. So I would encourage the planning commission to commence with making a determination on this.
Okay, and then my second question is looking at this on the surface, we're jumping from single-family residential up through a number of different zoning classifications between that and going to the Big Beaver district. And do you, the conditional aspects of this rezoning, where would they fit in terms of compliance, or I shouldn't say compliance, comparison to, because it looks like what's being accomplished here with the conditional rezoning is it's more like multifamily in a very general term. Can you kind of give me a perspective of how this would fit and be in comparison with one of the other zoning classifications other than Big Beaver?
Well, I guess my first point is that yes, it is going from single family to Big Beaver is a big jump in if it wasn't a conditional rezoning. Yeah. But since the fact it's a conditional rezoning, and the limitation is, he only is a attached attached. What do you call it? Attached residential, I think is what the term was in the rezoning statement, and a height of 35 feet. It's not as intense on its face as you may, or as big a leap on its face as you would imagine. If regards to Other zoning classifications, there are a couple multifamily districts. The multifamily, one of the reasons why he didn't propose the MF district is because it's got a height limitation of 25 feet if it's adjacent to single family residential. The 25 feet really is a pretty limiting height with regards to multifamily. And in discussion with the applicant, they felt that the Big Beaver with these limitations was the most applicable district to achieve what they were seeking to achieve. But with what they're proposing, the height restrictions and the use, we didn't find the jump to Big Beaver to be as significant a jump as it may seem on its face if it wasn't a conditional rezone.
Okay, then, because you're talking about a height question, I'll add to Ms. Parakis's request, and that is, can you tell us what the height of the Amber apartments is? That's on the diagonal going to the northwest is by comparison. In addition to
I looked it up.
I looked that up.
I found the PUD. Did you find the PUD height?
No, did you?
I did. I'm faster. Let the record show. The height of the PUD is 37 feet, 9.5 inches. I'll look up Amber now. And that's to the top of the roof. So from grade to the top of the roof for the PUD Stonecrest, at the time it was called Stonecrest, 37 feet, 9.5 inches.
And is that how you measure, are we talking apples and apples, is that how you measure the 35 feet limitation in this conditional use? Or is it measured to a different point in the roof? It's a story height or?
Unless signified differently by the applicant, we would do it by the definition of the zoning ordinance. The definition of zoning ordinance is basis, it's a flat roof.
And I don't know what that is. That's I'm asking for help.
If it's a pitch roof, it would be the midpoint of the roof, basically, essentially, from the eave to the peak. And if it's a flat roof, it'd be the top of the flat roof.
So that's the one measurement, and then the comparison of the PUD is 37 feet to the top of the roof, not to the midline. Am I understanding that correctly?
I'm sorry, I missed the last point of that.
I'm sorry. Brent had said that the PUD, the height of the building there, was 37 feet, and I believe that he said it was to the top of the roof. And I'm just trying to get that clarification as opposed to whether it was at the midline or not.
I was going off the drawings I'm looking at. Those are the numbers that are clear to me. I'm trying to determine here.
While he's doing that, I have the height of the Amber project across the street is 51 feet to the top of the parapet there.
Thank you.
Well, Brent's working on that. My quick thought is, we talked about tightening up the language. When would that be done? Would that be done at this meeting? Because especially what was in Mr. Carlisle's presentation, talking about what is the real meaning of development, especially the wetlands. Are they going to leave it as is? Where's the agreement there between the developer and the city? How's that all evolve? And are we going to have to postpone this meeting or continue this meeting until we get that tightened up language? Because that's a concern to me, what happens to that floodplain area.
So, Mr. Krent, if I may, what happens typically is once this body makes a recommendation to City Council, before the City Council public hearing, I will work with the applicant's attorney and we will draft a conditional rezoning agreement. And that's where the language will be tightened up. And that language will be based on the conditions offered by the applicant and approved by this body.
Okay. But it still leaves me, I understand what you're saying, but it still leaves me a little bit vague on what he's offering now. Is he didn't say leave that land undeveloped in perpetuity or he didn't say those kind of things.
Right. So when we get to the opportunity where the applicant's going to speak, he'll have to clarify what he means by his conditions.
Got it.
keeping in mind that he has to offer those and
Right.
they have to be in writing.
Yep. Appreciate that. Any other points of discussion before we have the applicant present? Okay, then, oh, go ahead, Mr. Tagle.
I wanted to ask either Mr. Carlisle or Mr. Savidan, are those regulated wetlands?
I don't know, Mr. Tagle.
Okay.
Mr. Rahman.
My question is about the easement. First question is, I think it will be the parcel where we have the PUD, that portion of the land. Is there any status? Does it have any current status? Like what is the plan for that, development plan for that portion? And then I'd like to know about the easement. If Mr. Carlisle can explain a little bit on that 40 feet easement that we said that we want to have. I mean, what is the purpose of that?
So my first off,
if I may ask my last question, which is there any future development plan on that site? I mean, why we need an easement? Why the place is not developable? Thank you.
Yeah, so the PUD has been approved as a separate parcel. It's been approved, it's been constructed, so there's been no changes to the proposed PUD to the north. My understanding is that condition of the easement was a carryover from the previous application that only included 2 parcels, and it was a protection of that third parcel, Mr. Black's parcel, if Mr. Black's parcel was never to be part of this development. So my understanding would be if Mr. Black's parcel is a condition of this rezoning, that provision, that condition really is null and void because it wouldn't be an easement for it.
Okay.
But that's what I was asking for the applicant to clarify.
So if the applicant can clarify that in that case?
They will, in the fullness of time here. Okay, any other comments before I bring it up to the, go ahead, Mr. Hudson. Did you want to say something?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Anybody else before I bring in the applicant? Seeing none, go ahead. Is that Mr. Nicola?
Aaron Nicola, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, good evening. Aaron Nicola, Eureka Building, 1590, 60 Livernois, Troy. Thank you for having us tonight here for this presentation. I'll be brief. I'll address some of the questions that were raised by Mr. Carlisle and by some of the commission members. Mr. Carlisle, if you could do me a favor, please bring up the site plan where we show the delineation of a 100-year floodplain, please. While I do this, I'll try to answer the questions. So, as you all know, or you've heard before, this is the second time we're in front of the Planning Commission. A year and 9 months ago, we had a brief discussion on the same topic where we had presented this conditional rezoning application for the 2 lots out of the 3. Now today we're including Mr. Black's lot, which is the north lot, the small lot, 70-foot wide lot, as part of the application. Mr. Black has joined the application at this time, but he still remains the owner of that north parcel. And I'm going to get to that 40-foot easement in a minute here. To address the 2 questions that Mr. Carlisle had raised, the first question was regarding the development area. The development area will involve only the area outside of the 100-year floodplain and the wetlands outside of it. We will take precautions, including soil erosion, fencing, what have we, to ensure that we're not interfering with the 100-year floodplain nor with the wetland. The wetland is further to the east of the 100-year floodplain delineation, so it's further to the east. But we will not interfere with that during our development. And as Ms. Dufresne said, we will memorialize this as part of our agreement, conditional agreement for this rezoning prior to going to City Council between our legal teams. The second question was regarding the conservation of the 100-year floodplain /wetland area. That will be done via a conservation easement, also to be determined during this legal discussion, basically this documentation, to ensure that we memorialize this as well as we record this with the right entities. So conservation easement, all the green area that is depicted in this site plan. Okay, so those are the two questions that Mr. Carlisle had asked. I hope the answer was clear. Do we have any further follow-up questions on these two topics? Okay, so then I will address the one of the commission members wanted clarification regarding the 40-foot easement. So as Mr. Carlisle had indicated, the 40-foot easement was one of the conditions that we had put up front at the original application when we applied for the first, the two lots, the original two lots. We included the same conditions for the revised application when Mr. Black, the lot to the north, joined the rezoning application, the conditional rezoning application. We still maintain that easement because Mr. Black at this point, he sees it as a benefit to rezone to Big Beaver with the restrictions as laid forth for the south two parcels, but he does not intend to sell his property at this time. He still wants to live in his house. One day, his family may choose to sell it once he passes on. And in such case, they want to ensure that if it is not us or somebody in our jurisdiction that is developing the southern two parcels, in the future, the people that will have ownership to that small parcel, the Mr. Black's parcel, they may be able to still develop and have access through the 40-foot easement access that will enable them to develop that small strip in accordance with the rezoning conditions. Was that answer clear? Any questions? Okay. All
Well,
right.
it's a little unclear to me. So you're saying that you're not planning on purchasing Mr. Black's property?
We would like to purchase Mr. Black's property, but at this time, he has lived in that house for, I believe, 70 plus years, and he's in his mid-90s, and he intends to live the rest of his life on that house, and his family supports that decision, just like they're supporting the decision to rezone because they see in the big picture that by rezoning, that small strip would also benefit in the future. But at this time, he intends to live the rest of his life in that house, and I believe he lives with his daughter in that house currently.
Thank you.
Yep. So a couple of more points, and I'll be brief. As I mentioned a year and 9 months ago when we had this discussion, we also had a meeting with the neighborhood or the neighbors at the Assembly of God Church, right that's south of this property. We had 4 or 5 neighbors that showed up. Once they understood the goal or the scope that we're trying to achieve here, they were okay with our approach. And also, I want to point out that during the hearing almost 2 years ago, we did not have any let's say, input from the neighbors on this development at that time. That's all I had. I appreciate the time. I didn't want to take this much longer, but if you have any questions from me, please feel free to do so now.
Okay, now Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you, Chairman Krent. Thank you, Mr. Nicola. I want to piggyback on what Chairman Krent just went over, and I was not 100% clear that on the explanation about Mr. Black not willing at this present moment to sell his property, but that might happen in the future. But you are asking for a conditional rezoning, including his property because he's agreed to get the conditional rezoning done as part of the Big Beaver district. But there is a big question mark as to what might happen to Mr. Black's property, in the sense it may or may not be part of your development in the future. Am I correct in my understanding?
Yes, and that is the reason why we're offering the 40-foot easement, access easement, that would enable Mr. Black's property in the future to be developed under the same conditions, either from us or from another developer. And that is why we're granting that easement, so that it would enable that piece to have the same value with that zone. Yeah, am I clear?
Yes. What would be your motivation in getting that piece of Mr. Black's property conditionally rezoned at this point in time? Are you still hoping that it will be sold to you, that you could get to develop later on?
Good question. The motivation basically it came mainly from Mr. Black's family once they understood what we're trying to achieve with that site. And when they saw that the future would enable them to enhance the value of that land strip, which is 70 foot wide, and it's a long strip, would enable them to build something more consistent with the PUD that's right next to them. They agreed that that would be the best case use of their property in the future once Mr. Black passes on. His heirs, his daughter and his son, would then take over, and they would manage the property, and they would choose to sell it or develop on their own. That is up to them. But us at this point, by offering that easement, would enable them to do so in the future, independent of us or not being there. We're very motivated to take over it, but at this time, we respect the decision of Mr. Black to live the rest of his life in a house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other hands up? Any other thoughts? Mr. Tagle.
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Dufresne. Do you see this from a legal standpoint as being a viable approach to these two and really we're talking about two property owners. I guess I've never come across anything like this. It's like we have one property owner asking for conditional rezoning, not only for his property, but for property he doesn't control.
Mr. Tagle, you raised the same concerns that I raised with Mr. Savant regarding this. It's my understanding, and Mr. Savant, please jump in if I'm incorrect. It's my understanding is that the city is treating the application for the one parcel, and also Mr. Black, he submitted a notarized letter saying that he agrees with that. So we're treating Mr. Black as a co-applicant on the rezoning. I think the question as we're sitting here listening to this, I'm having is essentially Mr. Black's property won't have any conditions placed on it. It will only be a rezoning to the BB, while Mr. Nikolai's properties will have the conditions that he's offered, because he just can't offer conditions on property that he doesn't own, and Mr. Black, as the co-applicant, isn't really offering any conditions as far as I'm seeing. So yes, Mr. Tagle, this is very unusual. And that's the best answer that I can give you right now. Mr. Savant, do you want to jump in? I know we talked about this last week.
There's nothing more I can add. It's an unusual request. I think the intent of the applicant is to proceed and not proceed with a rezoning that does not negatively impact Mr. Black's property. He wants to treat. He doesn't want to paint Mr. Black's into a corner and proceed with a rezoning of the two parcels and not include the third parcel and limit the development potential. But I would agree with you. It is not your standard application.
Mr. Krent, can I follow up?
I see a lot of thoughts going up on that one, because I could see right away if there's no conditions on Mr. Black's property, he could build to 55 feet or whatever that zoning allows. And so I'll just go right down the line.
Mr. Krent,
I haven't heard from Mr. Faison in a while, so
I think Mr. Tagle wanted to follow up. Mr. Krent.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the applicant if the Blacks choose to develop their property in whatever manner in the future, what does that do to your plans for what you want to put on your property? Like from an access standpoint. I mean, I don't know what the frontage is there. Would you be putting in a direct access to your development today when you develop your frontage on Livernois? How have you kind of thought through that?
We have the concept design that Mr. Carlisle can share maybe. We have a shared design, so shared access driveway per our design that we would build and enable it to be utilized by the future owner of Mr. Black, or whenever Mr. Black decides to sell the property. But what I want to clear out some maybe some confusions here. I understand the concern from commission members here in terms of Mr. Black's intention or joining the application as far as the conditions that go along with it. Our legal counsel is in contact with Mr. Black's heirs, and our understanding would be, and it's common sense in such case, that we would be okay if the commission recommends approval, with the condition that Mr. Black as well agrees to the same conditions as set forth by us in this case, in the applicant for his parcel.
No, Mr. Nikolai, that doesn't work.
Can't do that.
The applicant in this case is Mr. Black. He needs to offer the conditions. We can't add, this commission can't add any conditions, and you can't add any conditions on Mr. Black's behalf.
I thought that would be done after the fact when we do the legal documentation. Clear. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'll go to Mr. Tagle to wrap his thoughts again.
Well, I mean, again, I based on this brief final couple of comments here, I don't see how we can be acting on all of these three parcels in the meeting today. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm not sure what the end goal here is, really. I mean, I've heard what the applicant says, but there's too many variables in my mind to be able to say, yes, I'm ready to give conditional rezoning for all three parcels, which I don't even know if that's legal. It sounds like it may not even be possible to do that. So I don't know if the presentation of the application is in its proper form right now.
Mr. Roush.
So my question was going to be, in the materials that have been presented to us tonight, I don't see a copy of the application, nor do I see where Mr. Black has actually joined in and become a co-applicant. So without that in front of us, I don't know how we could go forward with the rezoning, including Mr. Black's property, as Mr. Frame has stated. And then the second part of that was the mechanics of the conditional use, assuming that we would have been able or could put forward a resolution. Would the resolution have read to include the rezoning statement? Is that how you would have taken care of the conditional uses or conditions that the forward the application?
Can you repeat that, Mr. Roush? You're kind of
I asked the question because I heard so many comments about taking care of the legal aspects afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments? I kind of agree with Mr. Tagle. The next person. I kind of agree with Mr. Tagle at this point that we really can't move forward on conditional on two properties or two properties, and on a non-conditional on the third. It needs a little more work on the legal side before we can make a decision, I think.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The application, I couldn't include it in the packet because it was protected. I will get a unprotected application from the applicant that I'll be able to insert in an agenda moving forward. I did include a notarized letter from William B. Black indicating, quote, I would like to partake in the rezoning of my parcel at the same time, and it's notarized. So that's how we treated it. We did not intend to make any mistakes, with any legalities. We can certainly have our city attorney and assistant city attorney work with the applicant to dot any I's and cross any T's that have to be done, and come back to this commission with all those details ironed out.
I think that's would make me feel comfortable and the rest of the commissioners too. So at this point, I have to still open up a public hearing on this?
Yes,
or
you
not?
do, Mr. Grant.
We're going to just table it?
No, we noticed the public hearing, so we need to open the public hearing.
All right.
And I guess
well,
we have one person, I don't know if this person is Lynn, would like to raise her hand.
okay. I'm going to open up the public hearing then at this point. Is Lynn someone out there that would like to comment on this as a part of the public hearing? If you would raise your hand on if you'd like to make a comment. I don't know if she hears.
Lynn is part of the applicant team. She represents the sellers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, sorry.
There's no one live right now for public comment. Are there any emails or voicemails that we should read?
There are no voicemails, Mr. Grant, for this project.
Okay, any emails?
Yes, there are 3 emails. The first one is from Chance Tess. In reference to the project noted, I am one of the property owners 88-20-22-301-009 and have been waiting over a year for this meeting to take place. I am in full support of the conditional rezoning change request from single family to multifamily with the conditions set forth by the Planning Commission and the proposed plans by Eureka Builders for the property. Please proceed as requested. Okay, that was one. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, you guys.
I've got the second one. I can read the second one.
Thank you. Thanks.
This is from George Contis. Members of the Planning Commission, our office represents Judith A. Bill and B. Suzanne Gianmarco, the owners of that certain 3.820 acre of vacant real property located north of Big Beaver on the east side of Livernois. My client's parcel, along with parcel number 88-20-22-301-009, are the parcels that are the subject matter of Eureka Company's conditional rezoning request for the Planning Commission's regular meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. on Tuesday, April 27th, and is scheduled for a public hearing at that time. My clients enthusiastically support the applicant's rezoning request for the following reasons. The nature and character of the neighborhood has changed substantially since the property was purchased approximately 20 years ago. The neighborhood south of Town Center Drive and the Livernois corridor is now predominantly multifamily and is no longer suitable for meaningful single-family construction. In the last 5 years, there have been 2 significant multifamily projects constructed and finished on both sides of the Livernois in very close proximity to my client's property. One, the Amber Town Center Townhouse and Lofts, and number 2, the Anthology of Troy, which is located on the east side of Livernois, opposite the Amber Town Center Townhomes and Lofts. There is commercial development on both sides of Livernois, south of the subject properties. Approving the zoning change of my client's property to permit equivalent development makes sense and would help add to the city's tax base. Thank you in advance for your anticipated support of the applicant's conditional zoning change request. Signed, George A. Contis from Gianmarco, Mullins, and Horton, PC.
And there's one final comment. To the City of Troy, William B. Black, 3364 Livernois, Troy, Michigan, 48083. I am the property owner to the north of lots, parcel number 2022301008, 2022301009. I support their efforts to have the property rezoned to residential multiple family. Sincerely, William Black. That concludes the email portion of the public hearing.
Okay, thank you for that. So then at this point, there's no other comments from the public. I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back for discussion with the Planning Commission. Any thoughts? Go ahead, Ms. Parakis.
My thinking on this is, we can go back and bring it back, but my thought is, I don't know that I would support a expansion of Big Beaver a quarter mile up from Big Beaver where there is no Big Beaver district between Big Beaver and almost a quarter mile to a half mile north of that. I know Amber Apartments was rezoned Big Beaver, but just because that happened, I don't think, I mean, to me, that's a slippery slope to say, well, they did it, so now we're going to expand it. The next thing we know, Livernois is going to be zoned Big Beaver District, and it's going to be a Rochester Road. So there are other things I think that, you know, I know that it was stated that we never really see, we don't think that there's going to be any single family dwellings here, but what about a cluster development? Or, I mean, there's other options that can be considered. I think jumping to a Big Beaver rezoning is a huge jump that I don't know what would change my mind at this point. That's just my thought on it.
Thank you. Mr. Faison.
Oh, one of the thoughts I had, and there was the conversation around the height of the assisted living center to the north, the height of Amber Apartments, and the buffer of the wetland. And I thought that the combination of all those things, and also seemingly the pattern of development going north from Big Beaver, I thought the property made sense in that context. One of the concerns I had was discussed fully earlier. I thought the third parcel would be subject to the same conditions as the others, and so obviously without that, I'm not supportive. But if it was all zoned with the same conditions, I thought the project seemed to make sense.
Mr. Rahman.
Well, my question is, we are here for conditional rezoning, and we are converting the Big Beaver into a conditional rezoning. I mean, converting a Big Beaver zoning to whatever we need to do. Instead of doing that, can we do a multifamily and convert that?
That's not.
Because I know the multifamily has a limitation of 25 feet. We can change that so that it will be 35 feet or whatever we need, but then it's not going to be an extension of Big Beaver.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Sock, the application in front of us is a conditional rezoning to Big Beaver. We can't dictate what they seek in terms of what district they seek for the rezoning. And secondly, the Planning Commission doesn't have the authority under conditional rezoning to grant variances for height. So they would have to go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a height over that 25 feet if they were to come back with multifamily as their zoning designation request.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Go ahead, Mr. Faison. You got your hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. I know we're talking about rezoning it to Big Beaver, but I thought the conditions associated with the rezoning would constrain what could be done on the site.
Mr. Faison, if I may, so yes, that's true, but we have the unusual circumstance that the one parcel, there really aren't any conditions associated with that most northern parcel, and we don't have the property owner here to address any conditions that he may offer. So that's sort of the issue that I've spotted here.
Understood, and I completely agree with that. So when I said I would be supportive of it, it would be if it was the conditions applied to all of the parcels.
Right, they would all apply because the city, according to Mr. Savinant, is treating this as a joint application. But as far as and if I'm wrong, please tell me, Mr. Savinant, but I'm not seeing any conditions associated with the northernmost parcel owned by Mr. Black.
I'm not comfortable moving forward with an application that is giving the Assistant City Attorney heartburn. So I defer to all legal matters. I defer to Julie on all legal matters, and that's that. So this item will come back before the Planning Commission. I'm assuming we're going down the road of postponement. This item will come back before the Planning Commission if and only when, if and when and only then when when Ms. Dufresne is comfortable with the conditional rezoning and the ownership issue. And if that isn't addressed, then it's not coming back.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that, and I wasn't saying anything different. I think it needs to apply to all three parcels.
Okay, at this point, does someone want, oh, Mr. Lambert, go ahead.
I was just going to mention one other concern I have, and I'm sure some of the other commissioners may have it as well, is that the green space that's to the east of the development, some clear language that shows that it's going to be set aside for either a conservation easement or some other restriction, so that going forward, we know that area is never going to be developed.
Ms. Malala Holly.
Just a quick thought. Yes, I agree with what Ms. Dufresne said, the not knowing what Mr. Black's, is he fully aware about what conditional rezoning is, and that he has to commit to certain conditions which go along with that. Not knowing that, I wouldn't be very comfortable, like other planning commission members, to say that this is something. And the second thought is, since our master plan is going to be under review, is this something that we can still consider at a later date? I know they'll be coming back as applicants, but at a later date, maybe when we have a much better review under session.
Again, this application was submitted well over a year ago, so I think that before we even conceived of going forward with the master plan. So we have an application that we're processing, and I think we should process it.
Okay, any other comments before I ask for resolution? Okay, at this point, would somebody like to make a resolution most likely to postpone? Mr. Hudson, did you want to, or Mr. Lambert? Okay. Go ahead, anybody.
Okay. Well, I would move that we postpone action on the application so that the petitioner has time to resolve issues raised by city staff, the planning consultant, and members of the commission.
May I have a second on that, please? Mr. Rahman raised his hand first. Any discussion on this before the roll call? Seeing none, Ms. Zarnicki, could you please give a roll call?
Mr. Roush?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Ms. Parekis?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you for that. Okay, next item. I kind of lost my papers here for a second. I think it's our planning commission comment. Am I right? Anybody? I just lost my page here for a second.
Yes, you're right.
Good. Any comments? I'm going to go just in the order that I see it on the on my monitor. So, Ms. Malala Holly, any comments? You could all unmute so we can kind of go through this rapidly.
Nothing much except I don't know how did our Zoom session go this time around, and is this the pattern that we are going to be following for future meetings?
Do we have an answer to that yet? Go ahead, Ms. Dufresne.
Well, I've talked a lot in this meeting, and I know that when the attorney talks, that means it's not been a good meeting. I would like, at an appropriate time, when it's my turn, maybe, I would like to have a further discussion about how we proceed going forward with public comment in terms of reading emails and such. I don't want to get it wrong again. And so to answer your question, yes, this is the format that the city is going to be using going forward. Right now, I think, well, we don't know when City Council will be lifting the emergency order. It could be as early as May 10th. That's when they're slated, I believe, to reconsider the emergency order that gives us the permission to do what we're doing tonight. We may not have the same permission to do this again tonight. We just don't know. So I think it went okay. I personally was expecting more people to sign in and call in just based on the number of emails and things we got on some of the items. So I think everyone was given the opportunity. Like I said, that information was pushed out. You know, anybody watching would have known exactly how to sign into Zoom, how to call in. So I'm comfortable that the information was out there in the public domain for anybody who was watching tonight. But yeah, again, when everyone else is done with their comments, I'd like to bring it back to a discussion about reading emails and such.
Very good. Mr. Rahman.
No comment.
Okay, Mr. Lambert.
No comment.
Mr. Roush.
I thought the meeting went really well considering this first time doing this, and the chairman did a great job with Mr. Frame being able to bring people in. And as it relates to the emails, I think that obviously we didn't contemplate the voting and reading off the names. And the other thing I think we need to take into consideration, I would like to avoid reading them as much as possible, but if a council member says that they have not had the opportunity to read the emails, then I think it would be a disservice to take action and vote on it if you haven't been able to read the emails.
Mr. Faison.
Nothing from me.
Mr. Hudson. Okay, Mr. Tagle. I got it. I got it, Mike.
I would just like to share a thought. In the Meadows project, we had a lot of discussion about different items, but one of the things that I think really we need to be careful with is comparing this project to other projects by the applicants in other communities, because there's so much information. We don't know why those projects were developed as they were. We weren't involved in any of the discussions or the public hearings. We don't know what ordinance requirements may have come into play or what the intent of the project was by the developer or by the city. So I just want to say that, maybe that, we'll stay focused on what we have in front of us at hand, applying our ordinances and just kind of focus on that. The other thing, and again, this might be part of the discussion about the emails. I wonder how many of those people that wrote in the email, where are they living relative to the projects that they're commenting on? And I think maybe the biggest one that would be the nature preserve, or the amount of people that signed in. And I'm not talking about the 140, right? But obviously, those 140 people were obviously lovers of the environment, which I'm sure we all are. But I think we need to be aware of the people that are commenting. Where are they living relative to the project sites, and putting their comments in that context. Thank you.
Yep, I agree. Go ahead, Ms. Parakis.
No comment.
Well, that brings us back to Ms. Dufresne. She had a follow-up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just don't want to get the resolution wrong again. I mean, I've spent a lot of time working on these resolutions, and it seems as if I have yet to get it right for this board. So I would like direction from this board as to what they want the resolution to say going forward in terms of public comment. We didn't, do we want to amend the cutoff time? I will tell you that there were late received emails, which will be made part of the public record going forward to City Council. I guess there's nothing in the resolution about what to do with late received emails. We didn't say anything in the resolution about what to do with multiple emails. We settled on a 3-minute time limit, which is appropriate. But when we have multiple emails that don't add up to 3 minutes, how does this board want to read multiple emails from the same person? We also haven't addressed the situation which we've run into previously, not tonight, but previously we've run into the situation where members of the public have submitted a form email, a very long email that, was drafted by one person, but signed, and sent separately by, 25, 30 different people. We didn't, this resolution that we have tonight doesn't address that situation. So without prolonging this meeting any further, I guess I want some clear direction from this board about how you want your resolution to read. I will endeavor to encompass it in a resolution and have it ready for everyone to review again in advance of the meeting. Because like I said, it's embarrassing to me that, we've changed it almost every single time. And like I said, I need some direction.
Ms. Parakis has her hand up. Go ahead, please.
Well, I feel like I want to address it because I was the one who proposed the resolution. I do think that this was sort of a one-off. I thought we were in a difficult spot for a variety of reasons. And one was the late decision for the platforms change to Zoom, which allowed for public comment, but maybe not feeling that the public had enough time to know how to engage in that, had already submitted emails. And I think it was clear that not everybody on the commission had read the emails. So that combination for me, I felt that it was necessary to read the emails into the record. I don't know that I will feel that way going forward. And the notice requirement went out incorrectly. I'm not saying that it violated any notice requirements, but I'm just saying that it was originally posted. So as a practical matter, I think it could have possibly created confusion. So I'm not saying anything was violated. I'm just saying I felt in my best conscience that it was appropriate to read them. Now that we have a platform of Zoom where we are allowing basically live public comment, I don't think I will feel that they need to be read out loud. But I do think if we are going to say that everybody has read them, that everybody needs to state for the record that they've read them. I mean, I think that that's very important.
But I don't think that we guarantee that everybody reads them. The resolution that I originally proposed said that they were distributed to Planning Commission members for their consideration and review, and they're made part of the public record. I agree. I agree with what you're saying, Ms. Parakis. In theory, yes, everyone's operating on the assumption that if someone sends an email, people read it. But things, life gets in the way, and maybe you're not able to read every word of every email that gets sent, especially when they're duplicative and multiplicative. So,
but then we can't make that statement. That's my only, the statement was
saying, I don't think anyone made the statement. The resolution doesn't say everybody read it. The resolution said that they were received and distributed.
Yep.
No, but other planning commissioners said that everybody's read them, and that's why Mr. Rahman made the point to say, he said, well, wait a second, I want to say that I didn't read them all. So I think it's important that we don't make that statement at a meeting. I know it's not in the resolution, but I just think that needs to not happen.
Okay.
I'm just going to add one comment here. I did read most of the emails, but there were so many from the same person that I chose to skip those. Now, if there was any additional information, I might have missed those because I'm looking at the person who's writing the email. And if it's the same person sending 2 or 3 emails, I would have skipped some other information in that email, assuming that this is the same person who's writing it, so everything would probably be the same. So just wanted to give a heads up on that. And time is of essence sometimes. If we receive 25, 30, 40 emails, yes, going through all of them can sometimes be challenging. I just want to put it out there.
Okay, well, have we given, I'll ask Julie, Ms. Dufresne, have you received enough info from this group to put together a new resolution?
I guess I'll just come out and ask it. For next meeting, do we want to continue with the same amended resolution that you passed tonight? Or do we want to change it again back to, we're just going to incorporate the emails into the record? I want to get it right now, as opposed to having this discussion again at the next meeting. And then
how many in favor?
In terms of back, it might be helpful if people don't have enough time to read the emails, if we back up the time. Right now we have a 4:00 deadline, but that's just something we've chosen. If we want to make it a noon deadline, especially given the fact that we have the opportunity to live comment, We can make it the day before. I mean, I guess, what do
Yeah.
people think about that?
I would prefer for day before, so at least there is 1 day time to read the emails, and the emails that come on the same day can be read. That's what something that, or some arrangement, because most of us have a day job, right? We don't always go and check what if there's an email, because today was exceptional, because we saw at least 4 or 5 or 6 emails that came, and I really did not get a chance to even open one of them. But I want to come to the meeting reading all the emails. So maybe we can come up with a plan, like on the cutoff time for the emails, that at least 1 day prior to the meeting will cut off, and then on the same day, on the meeting day, if the email comes, those emails will be read. That way, at least we can reduce
Mr.
them.
Raman, with respectfully, I don't think that works, because then
Okay,
what
well-
people will do is they will wait until the last minute to submit their emails, knowing that they're going to be read. So we need to have a cutoff with email, this is when your emails will be submitted so that they become incorporated into the record and received by planning commissioners. If you don't meet the deadline, then you call in and you participate that way.
No, I think I understand your point, and we can do that. We can do the cutoff period 1 day, because if somebody sends an email to planning commissioner and the planning commissioner doesn't have time to read it, then there is no point of sending the email. And also, I don't believe that we should read all the emails for like hours and hours. It doesn't make sense. So is that something that we can do, that the cutoff date for email will be like 24 hours? And then they can still come and make comments. So just to be practical.
Go ahead, Mr.
But
Lambert.
that's what I'm looking for, is a consensus from this group as to
Yeah,
what
go
they
ahead.
think is reasonable.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
I was going to suggest something. I don't know if ZBA still does this or not, but when I was on ZBA, we used to say if we had any emails, we would say we have 10 emails opposed to the project, 3 in favor of it. And then we could still keep the emails as part of the public record, but that way we read it into the record saying we've received these without having to read through the entire email, especially now that we're allowing people to participate live via Zoom at our meetings.
Okay. Any other thoughts to help Ms. Dufresne? Go ahead, Mr. Savadant.
Just a reminder of the different ways people can participate in a public meeting under this format. You can write a letter old school, put a stamp on it, and put it in the mail. You can call and you can leave a message on the voicemail that will be played at the meeting. You can send an email. You can participate via Zoom at your laptop or computer. You can participate by watching on television and calling on a cell phone. That's 5 different ways that people can participate. We're focusing a lot on emails. There's 4 other ways that people can participate. So I think I agree with Ms. Barakis. I think this was a one-off because it was a carryover public hearing and it was confusing. And I didn't agree with reading the emails, but I completely understand why a majority of the Planning Commission did so. I think it came off well, no issues. But I think moving forward, we're overemphasizing the reading of the emails. My opinion. I don't vote. It's your board. But again, there's 4 other means of communicating with the Planning Commission other than emails.
Any other thoughts to help Ms. Dufresne?
The timing part, who decided the timing that 4 p.m. will be the cutoff time?
You decided. When you passed your resolution, you decided. You were given the opportunity to address that. I mean, if you wanted to make changes to it, that's why we have a discussion of the resolution before it gets voted on.
I would at least request that at least you'd make it noon. Obviously, if it's 1 day, that's even better. But that way we have some, because 4 to 7, right? We start at 7 o'clock. It's only a 2 hours time period with like tons of emails. I feel like it's impossible.
Okay. How many would like it the day before? Cut off on the day before. Raise your hand. How many would like a specific time? What time would you like the cutoff to be on the day before? Let's make it a specific time, not 24 hours before, because
close of business day before.
Yeah, but you got to give them a time too, not just a date. You got to give them a cutoff time, because people are not going to do the math. What's 24 hours before the meeting starts? They don't know when the meeting starts necessarily. We just have to give a specific time. Mr. Roush.
My only comment on the 24 hours, if you put it the day before, put it late in the day, you got to remember that the agenda doesn't even come out until the end of the day on Friday. So the people also have time limits on their side. And the 4 o'clock thing has worked in the past the way it was. I don't know that you really have to change it as long as you understand that we're operating the same way the Planning Commission has always operated. The emails and information is presented in advance. It's given to the planning commissioners, and the people that show up, they get to speak. The ones that sent the information in, it's a part of the record, and we've reviewed it.
Any other ideas about the time the day before?
Well, I think we should consider staff getting these assembled and
Yes.
getting them out. So I wouldn't want to say, maybe 3 o'clock on the day prior to the meeting date, which gives a couple hours. I assume that.
Yeah, their cutoff is 4:30, right? That's when the bell to go home rings at 4:30 for the city hall.
Well, you understand my point. Give
Oh
them
yeah,
a little
absolutely.
bit
You
of
got to give them time. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
What do you say, Brent? What would be good for staff?
I agree with Mr. Roush. I think the way it works now is working fine. If we're not reading emails, there's a responsibility. I'm on a planning commission. I understand the deal. There is a responsibility for each and every one of you and every planning commission member in the state to prepare. And that means reading the emails, looking at the site plans, reading the reports, visiting the site, et cetera, et cetera. It's assumed, hold on, I'm talking. It's assumed that you're going to read the emails to the best of your ability. Now, we all have jobs. Sometimes, you do your best. The emails is one component of a complete package. This was a 145-page agenda. Not all those pages were emails. So it's one component of a big agenda. And again, this was a one-off. It was a very confusing. At the end of the day, reading the emails, I think, was a good play. It was fair. But I think moving forward, I think 4 o'clock has worked for us in the past. The only thing different is we're not meeting in person, but we're providing a similar, I think, more accessible platform than meeting in person. So I think 4 o'clock has worked. It's the individual responsibility of the members to read the emails themselves and move forward. That's my opinion.
Okay. 4 o'clock the day of the meeting, or 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock the day of the meeting, just like we always have.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I don't agree with that.
I think
I don't vote.
No, I think
I just want to make sure staff is covered.
There is a time mentioned, like the 4 p.m. We can always vote on the time, right? I mean, it can be day before 4 o'clock, or it could be on the same day. So can we have a vote?
Well, to make things simple, I'm just going to say day before at 4 o'clock. Anybody agree with that?
Sure. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Agreed. Yep.
All right. Any other thoughts before we totally confuse Ms. Dufresne? Go ahead, Ms. Parakis.
Okay, first of all, Mr. Brent, I appreciate everything you said, and I think it made sense. I would be fine with doing noon. I think a compromise would be noon the day of. The only thing I'd like to add is I really like Mr. Lambert's idea about keeping track of the positives and negatives at a minimum, just to say we received 38 emails and 10 were in favor and whatever. These were not in favor, just to give the people watching at home who didn't read the emails a flavor of what's going on behind the scenes. I think that would be helpful. I don't know who would be tasked with that though. If someone, like, I'd have to volunteer to do that every meeting, but I don't know who is in charge of it now to even say how many well, I guess you, Brent, you read the names last time of all the people who sent them in.
To Mr. Lambert's point on ZBA, the chair designates a person on the planning commission to do that task.
Okay.
And I'll offer myself up. I think it's usually the co-chair that's the one who reads the summary, so I'm willing to take that on as a responsibility.
Thank you, Dave. All right.
Okay. So not to beat a dead horse, but what I'm hearing is I think we have a consensus on a resolution that states going forward that the deadline is noon the day of the meeting, and that the email, if I put the language to the effect of emails will be, distributed to planning commission members and made part of the public record, and a tally will be made of, pros and, pro and con comments. I'll fix that, but is that something we're agreeing on?
I agree.
That's fine with me.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for indulging me in that. I will try to get it right next time.
No, you did great. We just, we're fine. I like everything. So any other comments before I adjourn the meeting? Good. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.